take. The most recent ones have been us joining efforts to fight back against the illegal tariffs. In addition to that, pushing back against their recent efforts by the EPA to overturn the endangerment finding, which Massachusetts led on. We wouldn't have this endangerment finding that says greenhouse gases absolutely contribute to climate change without the leadership of Massachusetts nearly 20 years ago in Massachusetts versus EPA. So we're fighting to protect that finding and have that tool help us address climate change. Another recent lawsuit is to protect universities, where they're trying to now go after their data and try to use data against them, essentially trying to come up with some theory that somehow they're breaking the law. So we're fighting against this arbitrary request to get universities, as if they're not busy already, to give them data that is just sort of a meaningless request. Another one that is, two others that are really important, is fair housing. They're not only coming after our ability to fund housing projects to bring about more housing in Massachusetts, they're also at the same time trying to undermine our efforts to legally fight back against fair housing law enforcement and discrimination by conditioning certain grants to our Commission Against Discrimination. So we're fighting back against that in one of our recent lawsuits. And then one other that I will mention that is equally important is fighting to protect our kids and our families and our seniors for all the grants that come from the USDA, which includes SNAP and WIC and other type of agricultural programming funding, critical not just for food, but the well-being of our kids, educators, providers. So there's a lot going on. I think what I want folks to end with, though, is this is a dark and gloomy time for so many families and so many people. The uncertainty you're seeing in the world and in Massachusetts and by our federal government that is not helping us but working against us is that if you feel alone or a sense of despair in this moment in time, know that you're not alone and that you have an attorney general and an attorney general's office that absolutely has your back. And we want folks to know that because we're mindful that these are really desperate and unprecedented and challenging times for so many.
A bunch of other Trump-related litigation or legal things. And by the way, if you have a question for the Attorney General, it's 877-301-8970 to call or text. Or if you're here, you can just go see Hannah. We've voiced this to a number of people. Andrea Cabral, who you obviously know, former Secretary of Public Safety, former federal judge Nancy Gertner. There's no question that district court judges, federal court judges, have been on the side of the Constitution for the most part, not so much the Supreme Court in most cases. Are you frustrated by the fact that even when there are rulings against the Trump administration on your litigation or others, there is generally non-compliance by the administration and no sanction for non-compliance, even to the point where judges have found that the prosecutors have lied to the court? There's no contempt findings. There's nothing. Essentially, Trump waits it out, takes it to the Supreme Court, and hopes that he gets his nominees to vote with him. Is that a frustration for you, or?
I think the frustration by the team is, one, just the blatant violations of law by the administration. Put aside the lawsuits for a minute. We obviously engage with the Department of Justice. We engage with the U.S. Attorney's Office. We engage with our federal agencies to do the work. And when things go terribly wrong, we want them also to hold folks accountable who are doing the work without a standard of excellence, with no integrity, or with an attempt to break the law or just lie. And they have the tools to hold someone accountable. Just like if someone in my office went to the court and represented a lie, they wouldn't still be in the office, right? So we do have frustration around that. And then, of course, when it comes to our lawsuit victories, including in the context of SNAP or other resources that we have secured through a legal victory through the courts, then we have to go back to the court to file a motion for them to enforce, meaning to get the administration to comply with the very order. Absolutely frustrated by that, because it's more time and resources that we have to bring to bear to make sure our people get the resources they deserve and are entitled to. There are many judges, and I don't want to put them all in the same category, but there are many who are standing up and fighting back through very thoughtful decisions that will help us when we get to the Supreme Court and other cases, including our birthright citizenship case that's coming up very soon at the Supreme Court. And there are many that have threatened or gone farther when it comes to contempt. But I think we all want to see anyone, I don't care if it's in the judiciary, the legal field, an attorney general, legislature, corporate and business communities, regular citizens, everyone exercising some courage in this time and doing it with a sense of urgency, recognizing that it's not just about protecting the rule of law and resources for us right now. We were just talking about kids, right? Our kids. It's about protecting our state, our country, for the kids and the generations to come. And if we don't get this right in this moment in time, we're all in trouble. So this is the time to exercise courage, and I think more folks in the judiciary will do that.
One more thing about Trump, litigation not yet, but possible, and then we'll get to your calls at 877-301-8970. The Supreme Court tea readers believe that the conservative majority of the day on this question about whether or not ballots can be received after Election Day, if they're postmarked by Election Day, that the judges will rule for the Trump administration and the Republican National Committee and say they cannot, which also some people think jeopardizes early voting, which is a whole other issue. This would affect Massachusetts if they're right about the decision. I believe we accept ballots 3 days after the election, and you're nodding, as long as they're postmarked. So let's assume that they do rule against late receipt. Well, it's not late receipt. Receipt of mail-in ballots, even if postmarked by Election Day, they don't count. It's June 30th when they rule, theoretically, or early July. What do we do in November in Massachusetts?
Well, I don't want to assume that. I want to assume the opposite.
But you have to prepare for the worst case scenario, as does the Secretary of State, I assume.
Yes, and the Secretary of State, who we obviously are representing in other pieces of litigation against the Trump administration, we'll communicate with, and he will absolutely get prepared, and he will be prepared. I will say one thing about our Secretary of State. He's the longest serving Secretary of State in the country. He has incredible experience. His team is really good. But of course, where we sit right now, based on the argument just happening, and so we will continue to have conversations to always prepare, is that we hope that the justices get this right. And so we're not actually, yes, there's been reporting on this. Based on our analysis of the argument, we still have hope that the justices, including some of the conservative justices, could get this right and allow ballots to be counted after the receiving, allow them to be counted even after, of course, receiving them, as long as they're postmarked and other rules are complied with.
But it seems to, I don't mean to belabor this, but I will for one more second. Assuming a ruling comes down at the end of the term, let's say, for argument's sake, July 1st. July, August, the September, October. There are 4 months for people who are busy, as we were talking about off the air, begin dealing with cuts to everything they depend upon, from, cost of gas going up to all their personal budget things, healthcare. Chaos would ensue in a state like ours. In Massachusetts, there are only so many people who would get the message, and isn't there an obligation on the part of Galvin and you to prepare people for the worst in advance, so that if it is to happen, they understand what they've got to do to have their vote count?
We always get prepared, right? We were prepared even for the Trump administration before he was sworn into office. We're always prepared. At the end of the day, there are fires right in front of us, and so we always are looking at, okay, what do we have to deal with right now? What do we have to deal with the next month, et cetera? That being said, I hope that in the deciding of this case at the Supreme Court, that they take in consideration not only the law, but also the practical implications of their decision if they get this wrong. The chaos and confusion that would disrupt not only Massachusetts elections, but other states, and how difficult in some contexts and places that have lesser resources, lesser human capital, how impossible that may be for folks to access the ballot. I hope they take that in consideration. Let's
take Peter from Rentham. You're first with the Attorney General. Welcome to the show, Peter. Hi.
Is it Peter from Wenham?
Oh, sorry, we made a mistake. It is you, Peter from Wenham.
Hi,
welcome.
Peter. Thank you for calling.
Hi.
Thank you. It's an honor. Attorney General, I'm a big fan of the new ADU law, but I believe my local officials are misunderstanding the law. I qualify.
By the way, we should say accessory dwelling unit, granny flats is what we call them. But go ahead, Peter, so people understand.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
I qualify to have the max size of 900 square feet. But I'd like to request a special permit to have 1,000 square feet to make it ADA friendly. But my local officials believe that if they allow me to have 1,000 square feet ADU, then I haven't exercised my right under the state law, and that they think I could sneak in another ADU law. But I believe it's a misunderstanding expanding of the law, and I was hoping you could clarify that for me.
So can you actually stay on, Peter? We are in the weeds on all things ADU through our municipal law unit and other parts of the office, doing technical assistance, including with town council or various councils, because we have run across other constituents who have run into some challenges because of either people are misinterpreting the law. So Peter, because yours is so specific and we want to be helpful when we can you just stay on so we can get your number and we'll follow up ASAP?
Stay on hold. We'll get your contact info, and the AG's office will be in touch, Peter. Thank you much for the call.
We have a
301-8970.
We have a text from Jenna in Jamaica Plain who says she'd like to ask the Attorney General if or how she's collaborating with other states. I'm so worried about the SAVE Act passing in the ways the Trump administration can try to retain power for the Republicans in the midterms. What can the Attorney General, our state government, realistically do to push back against this and work with other states, especially swing states? The SAVE Act, which is put a lot of requirements on voting.
So we're following this closely. We don't think it has a chance, but obviously there's always a possibility. But it's a tall order for him, especially given some of the rhetoric from some Republicans about this too. But we have current litigation in the election space with other AGs, including the one that was just mentioned that went to the Supreme Court, filing amicus briefs to support expanding, frankly, access to the ballot. So we were on top of this. If there's at some point a way in which we can mobilize, and it could be the SAVE Act, it could be him doing another executive order, we don't know, but we stay in touch with our federal delegation advocating through the legislature, and we also will mobilize and file a lawsuit if there's something that comes to bear, especially through an executive order that we can challenge.
You know, it isn't really your purview, or maybe it is, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a lot of fear about ICE agents being dispatched, not necessarily to the polls, or maybe to the polls, but to parts of cities and states where there's a lot of a population of people who came from another country, that's going to intimidate people who are citizens from coming to vote. That's not really your area, but is it something that people are talking about in Massachusetts?
It is. It's something people are talking about here. It's something people are talking about in other states. I think this is why folks in the legislature, including here, like the Black and Latino Caucus obviously just put out the PROTECT Act, which is working its way through the State House. There are other folks who are putting out all kinds of ways in which to hold ICE accountable, protect our immigrant communities, including in the context of elections. But folks are being prepared and mobilizing. I think the other message that we want to stress, which is not always easy to do, but I think important, is that when we're asking folks to exercise some courage right now, even in the midst of the fear they are facing, it's recognizing that those who are in positions of power are putting forth policies and putting forth not just policies, but taking action that is harming our people in very egregious ways. Like I mentioned our public schools earlier. Without our lawsuit, our public schools would not have opened on time. I mentioned NIH funding. That is critical to the Massachusetts economy, given the billions of dollars we receive. It's critical for clinical trials, biomedical research, real harm, and yet we still have to mobilize in this moment to protect our people. So we're asking the other folks to mobilize as well. Someone recently said, courage is contagious. And we hope that they will wait in the lines to vote and know that there will be people, including community efforts, where people are mobilizing to protect folks so they can access the ballot. And frankly, as someone who is standing in this identity as a Black woman, fighting to protect the 14th Amendment, knowing the history of the 14th Amendment and how folks fought to ensure that when formerly enslaved Black folks were let go, I'll put that in quotes, in this country, people fought to bring about the 14th Amendment, to make sure that rights and privileges were afforded to Black folks who were formerly enslaved so they could benefit from the rights and the privileges of being a citizen. People died for the 14th Amendment to happen. Without the 14th Amendment, I can't become the first Black woman AG of Massachusetts. I can't become the first woman of color elected statewide in Massachusetts. I can't vote in Massachusetts or anywhere. So I just pull on that history as more courage to get me to do what's necessary to fight back in this moment. And I just would encourage others to pull on either personal stories or some history where people had death at their door every single day, but did what was necessary, knowing they would never realize the fruits of their labor, but they did it for the next generation. We can do that in this moment in time, too.
Are you going to the No Kings rally on Saturday?
Yes.
Why'd you pause?
Because I was waiting for the clap. Thank you, my people in the library.
Yeah.
For those listening, there's a crowd in the library. It feels like a party. It's nice energy in here.
Okay,
but yes, I'll be there.
Calls in 1 second. One related thing about this PROTECT Act that's in the legislature. We've talked to you a lot about what the state has the power to do, basically a federal province immigration enforcement. But I may have asked you this last month, and if I did, apologies, but I don't remember the answer if I did. My take on this is that among the most important things that the Democrats are demanding is, one, that there be warrants in almost all cases if you enter somebody's home. And apparently Homan, the border czar, has tentatively agreed to this. The other thing is face coverings. And I was stunned when a federal court in California knocked down the California face mask law, not because they said it's not the state's business. They said, the judge in this case said, the only reason we knocked it out was because it didn't apply to all law enforcement officials in Massachusetts. Why doesn't Massachusetts add to the PROTECT Act or file legislation, or why don't you, that says no law enforcement official in Massachusetts, federal, state, local, may wear a face covering when doing their job? It seems to me that's a huge part of the terror aspect of ICE and CPB.
First, I absolutely agree with you, and have come out even, and we talked about this at one point, face coverings for those ICE agents or CBPB.
Yeah, I got it backwards too.
Yeah.
Border Patrol.
Border Patrol agents who are going into our community and frankly not bringing about or advancing public safety, but just bringing about tremendous fear. And we've seen the cases here in Massachusetts and have said, when you come in masked with that lack of transparency, and also, of course, if something goes wrong, it's difficult to hold people accountable. They shouldn't be wearing masks. And as you know, I left the radio and immediately got blasted, I think, by the U.S. Attorney herself. Mm-hmm. And I would push back even on her and say, when our law enforcement goes out to do operations and work, they don't wear masks unless there are unique operations or case investigations that require it. And they're explicit about that. So if we did an investigation and afterwards people said, well, why were they wearing masks? We should have some specific explanation for the public as to why. But the norm is not them going out and wearing masks as they do criminal investigations in our casinos, outside of our casinos, everywhere. But in the context of what we're seeing from ICE, we think they should change that behavior. The difficulty with states passing something like that is the enforcement piece. Because of the Constitution, federalism, it makes it more difficult. This is really a law that should come from the feds. And
as you know,
they're working on it.
Courts seem to say it's okay if it applies to every law enforcement official in the state.
And that's a possibility that we can explore, but at the end of the day, enforcement is still difficult. And why is that? Someone recently said to me, for example, having local law enforcement arrest an ICE official. You have to put yourself in the shoes of a law enforcement official who didn't sign up to be arresting another law enforcement official, and to do so against a backdrop where the folks that should be holding them accountable is the federal government. So putting sort of the federal government, our U.S. Attorney's Office, against me, against local enforcement, is a very difficult place to be, a very hard place to be. We want a federal government that holds their agents accountable. If something goes terribly wrong, they are arrested, they are prosecuted like anybody else for misbehavior, just like we would do the same.
So will you explore that and talk to us about it next month?
Well, we have already talked about it in many ways. I think there are several iterations of bills in the State House, so we can talk about it.
So
but at the end of the day,
support legislation that ban masks on all law enforcement people?
I can't say all law enforcement ban all masks for the very reason I just described.
Well, with exceptions in certain circumstances that are defined.
I've already come out publicly for that.
Okay, then why don't you file legislation to that effect?
Because at the end of the day, we can file that legislation, Jim. I don't like to just do things for the sake of doing things. I think too many politicians do that. What's the practical impact it would have on the ground? We pass a law like that. How do we enforce ICE agents that are under the authority of the federal government? We have no authority. I have authority over my state police folks in my division, not them, to actually not wear a mask. That's very difficult, and I want the public to understand that. Even as we're pushing for solutions, which we will, still sometimes the practical implication is opposite of what they want. And I don't think politicians do a great job of being truthful about what they're doing and the impact it will have.
877-301-8970 is our number.
John from Gardner, thank you for calling.
Hey, John.
Good morning, good folks. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I think one thing with immigration we can hope for is that Mark Wayne Mullen gets angry with Stephen Miller and pinches his little racist head off. But I digress.
Okay,
do you want the Attorney General's opinion on that?
God bless John. And first of all, I often say that I digress.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
And
John.
I love that he said, hello, good people.
What's your question,
Hi, John.
Attorney General, and I want us to do this politely, but when your explanations of the audit situation comes up,
Yes.
I mean, obviously I'm a lay person. I tried to think of myself as not too much of a dope, but it sounds like a bunch of legalese nonsense, frankly, that just seems like the powers that be circling the wagon. And I think the governor, by the way, has not gotten a bit of attention on this that perhaps she should have. In the open secrecy laws in this state, I mean, I could go on and on.
So what's your question, John?
It helped dissuade me from the fact that it seems like the powers that be are just circling the wagons to prevent upsetting the status quo. Thanks.
By the way, John, thanks. Just so people understand, what John's calling about is the question that passed on the ballot a year and a half or so ago that would require the auditing of the legislature. It got close to 72% of the vote, and there's been a standoff between the auditor's office. We discuss this with you every month, and your office as to whether or not you will represent her or allow a special attorney general to represent us now before the state's highest court. I'm sorry, take it away.
So two things. John, thank you for the question. I fully supported question one. I voted for it, and I have been explicit on that. We are at a place where there are two things going on. The first is there's a lawsuit right now that was filed by the auditor using, frankly, my former Attorney General opponent, Shannon Liss-Riordan, to file a lawsuit against the legislature. We are representing the legislature in that suit. Why? Because the auditor and any other state agency does not have the authority under our Constitution or laws to file an unauthorized lawsuit without the permission of me and my office. That's my job, to enforce the law of the Commonwealth. So when I represent state agencies, they need permission before they go to the court. It's been around the laws for centuries. So we are defending that. That will do nothing to move the audit forward. If anything, it's going to delay it. And that's unfortunate. The second piece is the audit itself. Let's get it done. I absolutely agree with you, John. We can. And I know we can. I even called the auditor recently after seeing her in Worcester. I have yet to hear back from her. I called her. Why? In the beginning, when she said she was going to do this audit, she kept really referring to it as a performance audit, even in the correspondence to her office. And we made it clear that that is sort of legislative business and affairs. There are constitutional limitations on the auditor to getting some of that information. But most recently in Worcester, when I saw her in Worcester, she has changed that. She said she was wanting to do more of a financial audit and wants the financials and possible state contracts, those two things. I called her, I've not heard back, to say to her, I think there's a pathway forward. The legislature, some of the legislature think you can't audit at all. I think you can within the Constitution. And so I called her, I haven't heard back, because I actually think we're not far apart. There's a pathway forward to get this done if she wants to get it done. Call me back. And then the last piece I will mention is, and I think this is important to John's point because it is legal in nature, is none of us, me as the Attorney General or the auditor, have unlimited authority. I can't sue anyone just because I want to. The Constitution doesn't allow it. Case law doesn't allow it. Even Trump, in certain cases, as much as I may not like his behavior, I can't sue him if it's not illegal. The auditor, the same. She does not have unlimited authority to audit whoever or whatever she wants. And in the context of the legislature, there are constitutional limitations. And my job is to enforce the Constitution. So we can move this forward if she can say, when you say this financial audit now, what is it you want? Are there constitutional limitations to that? And the answer is either yes or no. If it's yes, what are those? If it's no, fine. Because the court will want to know that.
But you've said, Attorney General, with all due respect, you've said that she has to, you've told us, that she has to tell you everything that she might ever want to audit before you can rule on this, which is an impossibility.
No, it's not impossible, actually.
How can she know what will happen in the future?
Then we can go back to the court and re-up a request.
That's exactly what I said to you a few months ago.
No, we can go back to the court and re-up the request. But at the outset, if you want me as the Attorney General representing the Constitution to go into court, You have to be crystal clear on what you want to audit.
Okay, so let me be clear. There are a couple things here. The request that she had before the state's highest court was that they appoint a special attorney general, which you have not done. Bob Cordy, former justice on that court, wrote a piece in Commonwealth Beacon. It's one thing, this is from him, it's one thing for Campbell, the attorney general, to take lawmakers' position on the matter and or her office to represent them. It's another for her to take the extreme view that the auditor cannot hire her own attorney. I'd like you to respond to that in a minute, but just so that everybody is clear.
I thought it was very clear.
If today the auditor sent you a list of everything she wants to audit today, you would say, no, turn off the music, please. Thank you. We're going to cut. We'll take a break and we'll come back and no, it's okay, and we'll finish the question in a second.
Thank you, John.
Our apologies.
Thank you. Yeah, we're taking a quick.
The Attorney General just said thank you, John.
We're taking a quick break because of our station up in Springfield, NEPM, but we're going to be right back to continue discussing which three-quarters of the text about today to our show are about auditing the legislature. We're talking with the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, Andrea Joy Campbell. She's going to be with us to the top of the hour, taking our questions and yours. This is Boston Public Radio, BPR, GBH, and NEPM, live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Every morning, you trust your alarm to wake you up. A cup of coffee to get things going. And a GPS to get you there on time.
Your route may be affected by...
For the news you need, trust GBH News.
Welcome to GBH's Morning Edition. Looking at local headlines this morning.
Get ready with us. GBH's Morning Edition with Mark Hurst. Weekdays from 6 to 10 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Boston Ballet, presenting The Dream, a program pairing Frederick Ashton's Shakespeare-inspired ballet and a dynamic world premiere by emerging choreographer Michael Stromae. On stage now through March 29th. Tickets at bostonballet.org.
And McLean Middleton, a regional law firm with over 100 attorneys and locations in Woburn and Boston, serving clients for over 100 years in the areas of corporate law, tax law, litigation, and estate planning. McLean.com.
And Rockland Trust Bank, committed to helping individuals and local businesses work towards their financial goals by providing financial advice and resources. More at rocklandtrust.com. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC.
And White Flower Farm, offering home gardeners a wide selection of plants, tools, and supplies for the growing season ahead. More at whiteflowerfarm.com.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're continuing our monthly conversation with the Attorney General, Andrea Joy Campbell, kind enough to join us for an hour to take our questions and yours. So, Attorney General, I was made question when you said you're very close with the auditor on these things. So just so I'm clear and listeners are clear, if the auditor tomorrow summed up everything she sent you, because I'm sure she'll say, I sent you everything you're already asking for, and said, here are the 11 things I want, you'd say, these are constitutional, these are not. If they're constitutional things on the list, you would then represent her if the legislature resisted the order on those issues? No?
Two things.
Yep.
I saw the auditor in Worcester. The auditor at the Worcester caucus said she wanted two things in the audit. That is different from what she asked for before.
I said if she summarized everything.
So if she wants those two things, I called her after it. I want to emphasize this to the public because this is now getting dangerous to the point where the vitriol out there on this issue is really sad and disheartening to watch. I called her to say there is a pathway forward. We're not far apart. We both agree the legislature can be audited. My job, not hers, is to enforce the Constitution in auditing the legislature. So if the two things you mentioned at Worcester are what you're looking for, great. The other question you need to answer, though, is do you think you have a constitutional limitation on auditing the legislature? She can say, no, I don't. Okay. And then she could also say, yes, I do. Great. We have to then present that to the court. You can't go into the court and not have an answer to that question. And she's never answered that question. Okay. We even gave you that question, Jim, to ask her. She's never answered that question.
One last thing. Yeah,
and it's not hard. It's not a laundry list. It's not complicated.
Understood. You mentioned the vitriol, and you voted for this question. You've told us repeatedly. And I assume you would agree if you're one of 72% of the voters in the state who voted for something that's being frustrated, and you are the only person who has the power as of the moment to have it go forward.
No, the auditor does.
No, well, I understand that. But you're the one making the decision that as of the moment you'll not represent her. We spoke to former federal judge Nancy Gertner a month or so ago and asked her if she was willing to serve, a very respected federal judge who, by the way, even contributed to your campaign, we learned afterwards. Despite that fact, the auditor said, fine with me. You rejected her as a mediator to try to resolve this issue.
We don't need a mediator, Jim.
But it's been a year and a half and there's no deal.
It's been a year because the auditor has dragged it on. And case in point, in Worcester, which was only a few weeks ago.
This is a Democratic convention in Worcester? Is that
it was a caucus in Worcester.
I'm sorry,
she spoke before me, and then I spoke afterwards. Okay. And she said, it's like a family fight. And I said, I want to address it because the auditor just spoke. She asked for two things, a financial audit. That is very different from what she has asked for previous, including correspondence we got in January of this year from her attorney. In that, and over the past year, she's asked for a performance audit, which is involving activities by the legislature, some of which are unconstitutional, which I made clear to her before the ballot question. So if people in the 72%, and by the way, I'm one of the 72%, and I can still express myself without beating someone over the head or saying really mean things, it's not personal, I want to get this done, then she has to call me back, post the audit question in Worcester. Call me back. I said, if it's financial, there's a pathway forward. You have to answer questions, though, because why? I don't make the determination ultimately. I give her a lawyer. She goes to court. But the court will ask. And we cannot go into a court representing anything without a legal argument, a legal claim, or some evidence. The court would knock us out. Just like if I went in there and said, I'd like to sue Donald Trump for certain activity and didn't have a legal argument, they would say, thank you. Why are you here? It's simple. If it's a financial audit, great. Do you think your authority is limited by the Constitution or not? Someone asked me that question. Andrea, Campbell, as Attorney General, is your authority limited by the Constitution? Yes, it is. And why is that? Because this says so. She has not answered that question.
Understood. I hear you.
Okay, just one last thing about this. You know, I'm not a lawyer. You guys are both lawyers.
I'm not really much
I'm where John is called. I'm a regular person.
Yes, thank you, John.
And we have the most secretive laws in the state, in the country. Massachusetts is extremely secretive. The legislature, the governor, and the judiciary, they're all they're exempt from the public records laws.
Only state in America.
Only state in America. And we, I would say, have a legislature that isn't popular because they don't get a lot accomplished. So when 70% of the people want to get in to see what the legislature's doing on financial issues or other issues or a lot of the shady stuff that I think goes on up there, to the average person, it looks like you are stonewalling along with the legislature that's stonewalling, while Diana DiZoglio is trying to get the people's will done. And I think that's the problem. We get buried in this legalese. And so you say to yourself, as an average citizen, what is the problem? If you wanted to help her get the audit and the legislature wanted to help her get the audit, we would have some kind of audit, and we don't.
I absolutely agree with you. And I feel like now I'm sort of in the middle of this. The legislature thinks they can't be audited, it's unconstitutional. The auditor thinks, I can audit them. And I'm in the middle saying, you can audit them, that absolutely. You have some authority, but depends on what you want. So if, for example, and I said this in Worcester, if you wanted the speaker's emails and certain things through the audit, you can't get that, it's unconstitutional. If you wanted some financials, you could probably get that, and some of that actually is available now on the comptroller's website. So for me to go into the court, to give her a lawyer to go into the court, to resolve the legal dispute, I need the auditor to tell me specifically not only what she wants and not change that.
I get that.
And then the other thing is, what are the constitutional limitations? We have to be on the same page on that piece.
But it almost doesn't matter because people are so upset about this.
I get that.
Three-quarters of the text we get today.
But I want the people to know I supported question 1 too. I voted for question 1, and I absolutely believe and want them to be honored in their vote. The only person right now that can move that forward is the auditor. And I don't want to let her off the hook. And what I mean by that is, why is it the auditor? You need to answer the question of, is it the financial audit? Great. Before it was a performance audit, now it's a financial audit. If it's financial, if it's a certain type, great. The second is, do you think you have constitutional limitations? This is what the court would ask. Because and if you say, no, I don't, or yes, I do, then what's your legal argument? Because I hate to say this to the voters, it is a legal matter now that will be required by a court to resolve.
We have to move on. One last thing, because it's related to the secrecy, and then we'll take calls on other topics.
But I don't disagree. And even on the public records, on the city council.
Yeah. Well, speaking of public records, she also has a ballot question now the legislature is trying to weasel out of even before there's a vote, which would extend repeal public records. They wouldn't be able to escape public records laws in the governor's office and the legislature. The governor
and the
told
judiciary.
Well, I don't think that's covered by her particular.
It's where we are now.
The governor said she's voting for that.
I will say I was on the city.
Are you voting for that question?
I will say many of these ballots are still before.
Yeah.
There are cases against these ballot questions, so I can't take a position now. But the public records request and expansion, I was on the city council in Boston pushing for the exemptions to go away. So I'm on the record already for expanding the public records law. So I want to make that clear. And to your point, Marjorie, as I was talking to my husband, I'm looking for a solution between these two parties to get it done. And I'm telling the auditor, who I think is more pushing for a fight, we don't need a fight. We're not far apart. I just need you to call me back. We could get this done.
Yeah, I think the head of the legislature could help too. I mean, I think Mariano and Spilka could help too.
If they wanted to change their position, but they have their
effort.
They have their own legal argument. Okay, but they've at least stated it. The auditor hasn't.
Okay, she's going to disagree, but we've heard you and we appreciate
ask
your
her
response.
The question, Jim.
We will ask her the question.
Thank you. You said that last time.
We're going to do it again. We've done it every time. We try to serve, and that's why I think a mediator like federal Judge Gertner would be great.
Jim. Just
Mark and Holden. Mark and Holden, you're on with the Attorney General. I'm sorry to hold you up so long, Mark. Hello, welcome.
Oh, that's quite all right. Hi, guys.
Hi.
A pleasure, Attorney General, to speak with you. Actually, as an aside, I have a plan for the auditor if she wants to get the audit done. If she can sneak in and get it done within 5 months, I know exactly when she could do it. Huh?
He's talking about the legislature's 5-month vacation. Okay, let's move on.
Exactly.
I'm obsessed with that too, as you know, Mark. Go ahead, keep moving.
I do. Yeah. Speaking of vitriol, I'm calling about the MBTA Communities Act, and I'm from Holden, one of the towns that is not yet in compliance.
Yep.
And we voted down 2 plans so far, and the vitriol's been crazy out here. I guess my question is 2 parts. One, as the lawsuit that you filed goes ahead, are you still working with the towns to try to get them into compliance? And 2, it seems to me that some of the towns, I won't mention any names, are trying to get in compliance by zoning areas that will be very, very difficult to develop. So they'll be within the letter of the law, but avoiding the intent. So I don't know if you're aware of that or if there's any...
Thank you, Mark, for the question.
Looking at it.
Mark,
yes,
thanks.
We continue to work with the towns even as the lawsuits go on with the hopes that we can bring them into compliance. And then the second piece that we remained, of course, concerned about is obviously once you pass compliant zoning, it does not automatically mean that you're going to be building housing for the people that need it the most. And so we are working through our new housing affordability unit to help communities bring about more housing. And that may be participating in zoning conversations where people may be trying to block housing that is legally permissible, including for elders or certain populations of people. ADUs is a great example of that. These are now as of right dwelling spaces. So we're doing a lot of outreach to towns on ways in which to expand that housing. So we're following that too. But the short answer, Mark, is absolutely continuing to work with towns on the implementation of the MBTA communities, because that actually outside of the Trump work, housing and affordability remains the number one issue in Massachusetts.
Mark,
so
thank you for your call. We really appreciate it.
So, Attorney General, September 13th, 2024, a state police recruit, Enrique Delgado Garcia, 25 years old, died after suffering head injuries during this boxing match at the training facility for the state police. The 16-month investigation, the independent counsel David Meyer has ended with some indictments. Tell us what happened.
So yes, we lost Enrique. It was tragic, and of course remain in touch with his family and the community, and even fellow recruits who were in the training academy who are now on the job, who served with him in the academy who are now on the job. Just horrific, and a very sad and shocking loss. It shocked everyone. That being said, I appointed an independent investigator in David Meyer. And David Meyer followed the evidence and the facts available to him at that time and indicted 4 folks on the state police. And so that is proceeding. And I can't say more than that because it's still an open, it will be an open criminal case, and they will be arraigned at some point in the near future, which he has more details about. And we'll continue to follow it.
One follow-up question on that, though, is while there were 4 people on the ground who were indicted who will have trials or whatever the result is, as has been said by a number of people, obviously there were people in charge who Meyer didn't believe the behavior of which rose to criminality. I didn't articulate that well, but you know what I mean. But who obviously had some responsibility that they may not have met because didn't meet because there's a dead state trooper. We don't know who those people are. And so as a result, the same supervisors who allowed this criminal behavior on the ground are still potentially, unless they've retired or something, still on authority. Wouldn't it be wise for the public safety and the safety of future state troopers to be that we know who these people are?
So I want to take even a step.
Do you understand at least what I'm saying?
I
sorry,
absolutely do.
Okay.
No, I want to take
Thanks.
a step back because one thing David made clear when we announced these indictments by the grand jury is that there was no intent or malice by these folks to target Enrique, to go after him, and to harm him. And that's an important fact to lift up, and he did the same. It was more reckless conduct, lack of action, failure around certain things. And that will play out in this criminal case against these 4 individuals. And based on the evidence and the facts that he had and presented to the grand jury, this is where he ended up. Over the course of that criminal case, who knows what else will be learned by David as he is doing this, but this is where the facts and the evidence have led him. And this is where he'll follow based on all that he learned, and more that will come out during the criminal case.
But what if it doesn't? What if the names of the supervisors who arguably
we will
knew
see
about
more
this?
will come out during the criminal case, but for the integrity of the case for all parties, that's all I can say.
Okay. We're talking to the Attorney General for another 15 minutes, 877-301-8970. Anonymous texter. Now that home improvement season is here, what's the state doing to stop door-to-door crooks from scamming homeowners using fake websites, bait-and-switch tactics, on and on?
Well, I would say if anyone is being defrauded or a scam is coming to your door, call us. We investigate all kind of folks who are going to door-to-door and selling products. If there's a consumer protection issue, we're here to help.
And speaking of scams, these prediction markets, we've been talking about this briefly. This is fairly new to us. This is the thing where you should explain what they are and tell us what you're attempting to do, Attorney General.
So we just had a huge victory against Kalshi, which is saying that they don't do sports betting because they're doing it in these prediction markets. But we're saying, no, that's still sports betting. And we had a huge victory, even though other states had pursued them. We had a huge victory recently where the court made it clear that no, they are engaging in sports betting, and as a result of that, you have to go to our gaming commission and get a license. In addition to that, you also have to take steps, as we require all legal operators to do, to protect folks against the public harms from betting, the addiction and public health outcomes, including for our kids. We have a whole sports betting coalition involved just directed towards young people around misinformation. And so we're continuing to follow this case. It's a still active case. It's still ongoing. But I think now other states and other folks are looking at legislative solutions, even at the federal level, to go after some of these folks that are participating in betting, but trying to suggest that it's something different.
We have a text here involving TransCare regarding the federal ruling that HHS cannot threaten, Health and Human Services cannot threaten healthcare systems that provide care for trans youth. New York has ordered hospitals that complied in advance to resume care. Will Massachusetts be following this model as major healthcare systems like Bay State and Fenway retreat from providing these services, essential services for people under 19?
So we have a lot of cases in this context of protecting gender-affirming care, and we remain in touch with various healthcare institutions. Many are still providing care in different ways. We're also mindful of how difficult and challenging the jobs are for these institutions, including Boston Children's. Not just the lawsuits and threats coming from the federal government, the threats coming from people and directly to the providers. So we're over-communicating with these particular healthcare institutions to ensure that folks have access to service. And if a particular institution, for financial reasons or other considerations that are painful for them as they make these decisions, cannot provide care, we're doing what we can to still ensure there's a continuation for care for families throughout the state. It's a difficult time for anyone who's in healthcare, so we're doing our best to fight back.
When you're talking about attacks on providers, did you mean like physicians that are involved in doing this? They're getting threats?
Absolutely. I remember some of the earliest calls with Children's Hospital in particular. And I went to visit, and I've since gone to other healthcare institutions, and just sat and listened to providers who were providing all types of healthcare and the threats they were getting on social media or the other ways in which they were being targeted, having to even change their license plates, other things to protect them. This was the state of affairs in terms of that hatred and vitriol. We don't just see it at the federal level when folks are attacking the LGBTQ plus community or trans youth. They're targeting these providers in horrific ways. And so we're doing everything we can to protect them.
Carolyn in Wenham, you're on with the Attorney General.
Caroline?
Thank you much for the call. Caroline.
Caroline.
Hi, Caroline. Sorry.
Hi.
Hi.
That's okay. I'm calling in regards to Todd Lyons, who is the second in line behind Tom Homan, and he's a resident of...
He's the acting director of ICE.
On the North Shore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He's a resident in the North Shore. And people that are just going out and putting signs out saying we support our neighbors and just standing up for their local residents have been attacked online, have been doxxed by nasty groups. They've been threatened. The families have been threatened, including military families. And I just want to know why he has protection and regular residents do not. And is there anything we can do to help our local Massachusetts residents against an acting ICE director?
So thank you, Caroline, for the question. Thank you for everything you're doing, because as you just mentioned, it's not without risk. And when you say protection, yes, we are afforded, I say as public servants, some people are afforded certain protections. But that being said, if something rises to criminal or other liability, there's an opportunity to hold them accountable. And I think one of the things, when we launched our storytelling portal recently, or even the platform recently with the governor, particularly in the context of immigration, we're encouraging people to reach out to us, right? Not to just hold their stories or to leave it online, but to actually reach out to us. We are monitoring what we're receiving, because if it does rise to the level of being able to bring a case to hold people accountable for certain actions, we will, including in the immigration context. And then we also recognize it still can be very difficult to do that if people are staying behind the First Amendment, their free speech, and their disagreement. But that being said, Caroline, we're encouraging folks to find us with some of these newer tools and platforms to report some of this to us so that we can hold them accountable.
Caroline, good luck. Thank you for the call. We've talked to you a lot about your proposal. Can't remember the name of it, but it includes bell-to-bell, no cell phones in schools, which I know. What's it called?
The Study Act.
Study Act. Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate that. That's why he's there. He fills in the blanks when I have them. I have plenty of them.
The Study Act, which
thank you. The Study Act.
Want to pass.
Which overwhelmingly, the public sports, overwhelmingly teachers support. And shockingly, I believe it passed the Senate, and we're waiting for the House to wake up and do something. What's going on?
So I actually love that you brought this up, because in addition to all the other work, we're doing everything we can to protect our kids, particularly when it comes to tech. Everyone should be concerned about social media platforms. In New Mexico, my counterpart, Democratic AG in New Mexico, just had a huge jury verdict in their case against Meta. We still have active litigation against Meta and TikTok to hold them accountable for the platforms causing harm through their algorithms and designs. And that's ongoing. But we recognize lawsuits can take a very long time. So we filed the Study Act with the goal of doing a few things. One is holding tech companies accountable for the ways in which we are trying to do so through the lawsuits, which is age verification, for example. Make sure that works. The ways in which they have infinite scrolling. There are ways in which they can change the design features to make our kids less addicted. And they haven't done that. So the Study Act speaks to some of those ways we would require through a legislative solution if you operate in this state. The second is, we know if you're putting addictive platforms on already addictive devices, you can't hold the companies accountable and not do anything about cell phones. You have some school districts right now that prohibit cell phone usage while in school, others not so much. And then you have educators trying to enforce this while they're teaching. We think ban cell phones while kids are in school learning, and then get your cell phone afterwards. And then the third piece is we said we wanted to help school districts fund some of this. We recognize that they can't do it on their own. So the Senate took more of the cell phone ban piece and less of the hold the tech companies accountable. We still want that. We think every part of the bill is important. The House is still working through that. We're talking through the conversations with them on all of these pieces. And then the governor also came out with ways in which to also join us in this effort. But I would encourage anyone who is listening, anyone in the audience, even if you don't have kids, the Study Act will be, if it's passed, a game changer when it comes to holding tech companies accountable. And we can do that through legislative solution. And it complements our current lawsuits, which can take longer.
And did the Senate strip the language around holding the tech companies accountable because some of them are owned by tech companies? Or what was the argument about this?
I think there were different concerns they may have had around constitutionality, et cetera. And we have been pushing back to say we think it's constitutional. And we think even this recent jury verdict in New Mexico could be helpful to our cause, because they have tried to stand behind a federal law to say, no, you can't come after us and hold us accountable for harms on our platform. We're exempt. And we're saying, no, you're not. And we've won at different stages. So we're going back into the State House to push folks and to say, we can do this, and we don't think it's a risk. We think it's absolutely constitutional as drafted. And we know the Study Act will be a game changer. And to your point, educators or anyone working in any schools welcome it, because it's a major distraction to the learning of our kids. And in addition to that, we're seeing the uptick of complaints of bullying, harassment by kids who are harming each other using these platforms on their phones while they're sitting in a school. We have to do something about it.
Study Act, call your legislator, call your House member.
Thank you.
Estella in East Boston, thank you for calling. You're on with the Attorney General.
Hi, how are you? I'm wondering
Stella.
What is the deal with the pay-by-plate and the Easy Pass and the PAM, the collection agency? It's all state-run, and they're charging excessive amount of tolls. I asked for proof of debt. They sent me 37 pages that didn't make sense, and the Easy Pass customer service rep couldn't explain it to me either.
Stella, can you just stay on?
$712.
Okay, can you stay on? Because it sounds like it's a little specific too. Can you stay on? We can get your contact and just follow up on this one.
Yeah.
And that way you don't get cut off too. But can you stay on?
Away.
We'll follow up with you on this particular case
info.
to help you navigate.
Stella, thanks for the call.
Thank you.
You know, meanwhile, Attorney General, Democratic leaders up on Beacon Hill are pushing this legislation to fight back against Trump's mass deportation efforts, as the Globe puts it, including language that would ban federal immigration officers from making civil arrests in state courthouses. Are you involved in this?
Yes, the short answer is yes. And what I mean by that is we have the PROTECT Act, which includes some of that language. The governor also has some efforts. And then there are other legislators that also have efforts based on what they're seeing in terms of immigrant enforcement in the state. And so we're following all of it. It's all working its way through the State House. There are hearings that are coming up. But what we've made clear is we're informing different provisions of bills. We reviewed several iterations of different bills, is that we want to support any legislative solutions that will help us protect our immigrant communities from the egregious tactics we're seeing in certain communities. And we think there are some good things in there.
We have time for one more quick one. Can we go to Rama?
Did we already talk to Rama?
No, we didn't.
Oh,
in
we
Central
didn't.
Mass. Welcome
Sorry.
to the show, Rama. How are you? What's up? Got a minute?
Hi, thanks. Excuse me. Yeah, I got a minute. I encourage everyone to read the state constitution, which I did. I found it at the Concord Library. I read it, and then I met with my state representative, and I got the addendum since it was written. There is nothing, absolutely nothing in the Constitution that prohibits it prohibits the auditor from doing her job and auditing every department. There is nothing.
That is incorrect.
What's your question? What's your question,
Well,
Rama?
my question is, why does the Attorney General keep going on with this? It's so frustrating. 72% of us.
You don't have to refer to her in the third person. She's
yes,
talking to
and
you
I'm
right
part
now.
of the 72%, Rama.
Why do you keep? It's legalese. It really is. John and Gardner said it well. My head's spinning. All of our heads are spinning. Read the Constitution, everybody.
Read the Constitution.
I don't disagree, because we don't teach it in our schools, that's for sure. And you would learn something great about Massachusetts. Our Constitution is the oldest, and it informs the federal one. So it's really good. But that being said, even before the ballot question was put out, placed on the ballot, which we certified and approved, and I voted for, even before that, when the auditor attempted to audit the legislature, we sent her a letter, and maybe we send that out again, making explicit as to what some of those constitutional limitations were. And it wasn't just my interpretation. The office has been around since the 18th century. It was other interpretations, too, that made it crystal clear that there are constitutional limitations on auditing the legislature. But if the auditor calls me back, we will resolve it. And let me tell you, she didn't call me back. Instead, she sent an email through her lawyer to my lawyer, my team, and said she won't call me back, apparently. She's only going to work with us through her staff. Call me back. We can get this done.
You want a one-on-one meeting?
It doesn't even have to be in person. She can call me and get it done.
You and her.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And we can get this done.
Think the legislature should cancel their 5-month vacation this year and do some work? Thank you. Oh, we ran out of time.
Thank you, everyone, for having me. Stay blessed and healthy. And remember, you live and work in the best state in the country.
Thank you very much for being with us, Attorney General Campbell.
Both.
Thank you very much. We've been speaking, obviously, with the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, Andrea Joy Campbell. We very much appreciate her time. We say goodbye to those of you listening on NEPM. Thank you for tuning in. The show is going to keep going on here in Boston, though. Coming up after this quick break, two great musicians, Dani Offline and Claire Ernst. They're up-and-coming stars working with the Salt Lake Incubator. You want to stay tuned to hear them. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR, GBH, and NEPM live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Support the news you trust by donating your car, truck, or other used vehicle to our vehicle donation program. You'll have more space in the driveway this spring, and you may earn a tax advantage. Learn more at gbh.org/vehicle donation.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Mass General Brigham Health Plan, providing helpful digital tools, world-class providers, and coverage that help you live in the moment. More at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org.
And Bernadine Sung Megasin at Dream Mega International Realty, dedicated to helping buyers and sellers across Greater Boston, offering market insight and guidance through each step of the process. More at homesbybernadine.com.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Boston Ballet is going electric. With its latest production, The Dream, the company pairs a classic Frederick Ashton ballet with a bold new work by Michael Strohmeyer, featuring legendary guitarist Reeves Gabrels of The Cure, playing electric guitar in the pit. It's a striking collision of ballet and rock. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Welcome to BPR, Boston Public Radio, and GBH, hour number 2. Thank you very much for tuning in. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Ken Casey from the Dropkick Murphys is going to be here in a few minutes. He's going to talk to us about his band's performance Saturday at the big rally, the No Kings rally down on Boston Common. On Friday, the governor will be with us here at the library from 11 to noon. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. So it's a special edition of live music on a Wednesday It's a double feature, two incredible up-and-coming young artists. And by the way, Marjorie's idea was they're here not to perform. They're going to talk about whether the legislature should be audited. So are you ready for that? I hope you are. Okay. Two fabulous young artists who we heard this morning, Dani Offline and Claire Ernst, who are both gearing up for Salt Lick's next show at the Great Umbrella venue in Concord on Friday, March 27th at 7:30. Claire Ernst is a pop R&B artist based in Nashville. Dani Offline over there is a songwriter, producer, and multi-instrumentalist making analog R&B. Marjorie and I saw a recent Salt Lick performance in Concord. John Baptiste, who's on the advisory board, was the leader. 4 spectacular young bands. One of the best nights, I think Marjorie and I would agree, we've had in a long time. You don't want to miss anything Salt Lick does. Tickets are at theumbrellaarts.org. In a minute, we'll talk with Claire and Dani at the BPL interview desk together with the president of Salt Lick Incubator, Liza Levy. But first, here's Dani Offline performing Plastic Bending. Welcome, Dani.
Plastic bending, don't you love when I'm pretending? Tiny movements, robot dream girl, maybe I'm misunderstanding. Can't be too much. I just wanna make you happy. Anything you want, just ask me. I can do that for you. I'll be cool if you ignore me. Pick and choose when to adore me, 'cause I'm made just for you. La da 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 da. Shapely, shifting, disappearing, so you miss me. Prevent the end. Code runs quickly, lose myself just when you kiss me. Won't do that again. I just wanna make you happy. Anything you want, just ask me. I can do that for you. I'll be cool if you ignore me. Pick and choose when to adore me, 'cause I'm made just for you. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ah, ba 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 da da da. Plastic bending, plastic bending, plastic bending, plastic bending.
Offline, plastic bending. She's going to join us.
In just a second, she's going to come over here and tell us about that song and tell us about Salt Lick. We're going to hear from Lisa about Salt Lick as well. So, Dani, before we get to Salt Lick and what it's all about, tell us about that song you just performed for us, that beautiful dreamscapey you described in one of the things we read about you, and it's so true.
Oh, thank you so much. I wrote Plastic Bending just thinking about this kind of pressure for perfection and performance as a woman, and this kind of feeling that you have to be malleable in romantic experiences.
Yeah, we can relate to that.
Yeah.
So, Liza, you guys, you and Roger Brown, who's in the audience, former head of Berkeley, and obviously you guys are the Salt Lick couple, for lack of a better expression. For those who've missed you and your artists in prior shows, tell people briefly what Salt Lick intends to do.
Salt Lake Incubator is a nonprofit organization that supports emerging artists who are putting important, powerful, impactful music into the world. Dani Offline and Claire Ernst are two of the artists within the incubator, and this initiative that we've just started is a touring initiative because this music is best experienced live, as I think we can all agree. And there's an issue with the economics of music and touring that until you can sell 500 tickets, you can't get out on the road. So we've helped put them on tour with an organization called Live Music Society and Detour, and with the help of the Umbrella Arts Center to kick it off.
It was what a beautiful venue where every single seat is perfect. The sound is beautiful. It's
Before
great.
we get to Claire, tell us a little bit about the venue up there in Concord, which I had never been to before.
Gorgeous. Every seat in the house sounds good. So even if you don't have your tickets yet, don't worry about it. Grab your tickets. Even if you're in the back row, you're going to have an incredible experience. The team there is amazing, and they are committed to supporting emerging artists.
Claire, how important, this is a loaded question, so try to be as honest as how important has Salt Lake been to your career?
They've been extremely important. I mean, it's kind of a situation where once you're in, and they just kind of throw every opportunity your way, and it's extremely helpful. Like, we're independent artists. It's hard to find funding, and that funding helped fund my debut album and music videos and all these things that seem so hard and impossible, like touring, and they make it happen. So,
Hello is the debut, correct? Album. How about you? What's it meant for you, Dani?
Well, I'm a new Salt Lake artist, and I think for me, in addition to the validation, just having that access to resources and availabiliity of Salt Lake to really nurture you as an artist and encourage you to grow and do things that you didn't think were possible before.
You guys didn't know each other. I asked you before this morning, you didn't know each other. Is it helpful to meet with similarly situated, wildly talented people? I'm serious. Who are waiting to break through. Does that help you, either of you? Does it help you to know her? Does it help you to know her?
We're having so much fun.
We are.
I think also just having very honest conversations about what we love and what we love to do.
Mm-hmm. What do you say about Liza behind her back?
Terrible thing.
Okay, fine.
You know, I have this, because I don't know anything about how you make music, but I had this vision of, the artist is in the room with the microphone, there's like 7 people, and you're behind the glass thing, and you're recording all this music. But what it sounds like to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, we'll start with you, Dani, it's almost like you're making this music in your bedroom and doing the producing and everything. Tell us about how you do it.
I mean, well, that's really how I started making music, is just making music on the computer, playing guitar and piano and crafting a song and then just trying to build something around it.
So does that make it easier or harder? I mean, because you don't have to at least hire 17 people to work with you. What is the deal?
I think it's just more creative. I think it's more easily accessible for you to meet up with all of your peers and just make something instead of needing to rent out studio time and pay musicians and stuff. You can just I think we're both blessed to just have extremely talented friends, and that's the best part of it.
Well, you had a whole musician family. Your parents are musicians,
yeah.
right?
My dad is a jazz pianist. My mom is a singer.
And were you doing stuff when you were 2.5? Almost everybody comes here. Almost everybody went to Berkeley. Okay, that usually happens, Roger. And secondly, with very few exceptions, they all started playing at 3. Or some guy a couple of weeks ago. Were you playing when you were a little kid?
I was, yeah. I started piano lessons at 3, which was really just playing with a ball or something. It wasn't really piano lessons. But it's always been in my blood.
And your most important influence, we read, is your parents had NPR on in the car.
That's right.
Yes,
matters,
they did.
right?
It's true.
That's wonderful.
True.
How old were you when you started playing?
Neither of my parents are musicians, but they have really good music taste, and they both love radio. I started learning to play piano when I was in kindergarten, so pretty early.
So, Liza Levy, back to Salt Lake. I mean, so you mentioned before people have to get sell 500 tickets so they can go on the road. So how do you step in?
So by pairing artists who are musically different but have enough crossover, we can help cross-pollinate their audiences. So Dani's audience is discovering Claire and vice versa, and then we're working with these incredible venues like the Umbrella Arts Center that have sort of a built-in following of people that know the curation is going to be excellent and anything we see there is going to be really exciting.
But you had to put together the tour as well?
Yes, we had the independent network of venues help out called Detour. So they called up all their friends and said, hey, we need to get behind this initiative.
When there are people, we were sitting around people, some of whom were when we went the other night, a couple of weeks ago, whenever it was, a couple of donors.
Well, you're so close to the stage. No matter
great.
where you sit, you're so close to the stage.
How do people help who are not major donors to Salt Lick? What do they do?
How do people help you?
Come to the show.
Come to the shows and support and follow us and buy merch and all those things.
Stream their music.
Share.
Follow them on Instagram.
How do you deal with it? It seems to me, one of the takeaways I had from the concert we went to that, again, was headlined by John Baptiste, whatever it was, a month or so ago, we're looking at each other saying, I hope you don't take us the wrong way, by the way, I can't believe how talented those people were. I can't believe how talented those people were. And while one of the bands, the name of which I forget, was the first, I think, independent
Couch.
Right, to sell out
they'll be playing at the end of the Boston Music Festival.
Right, with like 3,000 seats or whatever the hell it was. How do you deal with the frustration level that you got to feel? If you're as talented as these guys are and as those people were, and they still haven't had that breakthrough moment, what part of what you do deals with the psychological part of this?
Well, Dani was discussing the other day, it takes 10 years, and you were saying even overnight success is there's 10 years behind it. And I think artists come at it from all different angles. Claire writes songs full-time in Nashville. That's her job. Dani's PhD and teaches and also writes songs and produces for other artists. So I think there are so many pathways to get there, and you just have to have the patience and the fire in the belly to want to do it.
And you both have touched on the difficulties you can sometimes run into as what about that, Dani?
Well, I think being a woman, and especially a woman in music and producing, that's part of why I started doing things alone, because it was just so much more accessible to do it by myself. But honestly, I feel like I'm already living my dream. I don't really feel too impatient about this success. And I think, as a woman, I love seeing other women succeed and do the same.
How many black women producers are there in the room?
I think we could probably make a group chat of like all five of us.
Really?
Yeah. There are very few female producers. I think it's like 2.1%.
Wow.
And
women in general?
Women producers, exactly. And then of those women who are women of color, I can only imagine it's a smaller number,
But I am surprised at that in a way, because you think of so many incredibly talented women of color who've made it to the top of the charts for decades. So what do you think it's about?
I mean, I think we all have something to say, and we're very passionate. I think that the fact that there's such a small amount of women in music and so many of them are exceptional means that, wow, what would it look like if there were even more women in music?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Claire Ernst, what are you going to play for us? You're going to leave your partners here in a second.
Yes, I am.
And we'll talk
I'm going to leave you guys and play my newest single, Nice Things.
Which you wrote.
Yes.
Fabulous. Put that gently down. Liza, tell people again how they can go see these fabulous performers on Friday night.
UmbrellaArtCenter.org. Tickets are still available. They will be playing 45-minute sets each, and can't wait to see you there.
This Friday.
Well, let me just do an endorsement again. I said it, I'll say, we had as much fun as you can have at a night dressed at a...
really?
That last thing with him. But no, really, well, I mean, it's true. I'm trying to be as honest as I can. Here's Claire Ernst. Claire, can't wait to hear you. Welcome.
Yeah, the song is called Nice Things. I just released it. I had these shoes that I loved. I saved up for 6 months and I ruined them on the first wear. I had this purse from Chanel, was expensive as hell, that I left on the back of my chair. History's proven if I love it, I'll break it or lose it. I think that I can have nice things that I always mess up, that it's kind of my thing, but I know now that might not be so true, 'cause you're sitting right here and I haven't lost you. Somehow I still haven't lost you. Somehow I still haven't lost you. Somehow I still haven't lost you. No, somehow, somehow, somehow. Now you go back to the bar, close my tab, get my car and my bag where I left it again. again. I can't wrap my head around the fact that you go and do all that 'cause you love me, and just 'cause you can, you make it too easy. What if I change your mind, make you leave me? I think that I can, if nice things that I always mess up, that it's kind of my thing, but I know now that might not be so true, 'cause you're sitting right here and I haven't lost you. Somehow I still haven't lost you. Still haven't lost you. Somehow I still haven't lost you. No, somehow, somehow, somehow. I think that I can, if nice things that I always mess up, that it's kind of my thing, but I know now that might not be so true, 'cause you're sitting right here and I haven't lost you. Somehow I still haven't lost you. Somehow I still haven't lost you. Somehow I still haven't lost you. No, somehow, somehow, somehow. Ah. Thank you.
That was great, Claire. Thanks.
That was Claire Ernst. She just performed for us. We also heard from artist Dani Offline. They're both going to perform at Salt Lake's next show at the Umbrella in Concord on Friday, March 27th. That's 3 days from now, 7:30 p.m. We've also were graced to speak with the president of the Salt Lake Incubator, Liza Levy. Thank you both, for all three of you, for coming in.
Guys.
Tickets for this Friday. This is 3 days from now, the 27th, 7:30 in Concord at the Umbrella. Tickets at theumbrellaarts.com. Theumbrellaarts.org. Excuse me. Umbrellaarts.org.
And it's also 2 days.
Did I say 3 days?
Yeah, it's close
Say
enough.
Wednesday?
It's close enough.
Sorry.
Go when you want, but it's better if you go
No,
Friday.
it's Friday.
That's when the
It's Friday. Let me
concert
say
is,
it one more time and not screw it up.
Sure, go ahead, Marjorie.
Umbrellaarts.org.
What day is it again?
On Friday, which is 2
That's
days
2 days
from now.
away.
Okay.
Get your tickets.
Thank you very much.
Great to see you guys. Thank you
for having us.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you very much for coming in. Coming up, that's a quick break. Dropkick Murphys frontman Ken Casey is here ahead of the band's performance at the No Kings rally this weekend. He's going to talk about his band's pro-worker, anti-fascist legacy and what bands can do to protest what if they don't like what's happening right now in the USA. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, two neuroscientists over at Harvard say there's hope of creating a new, reliable method for detecting Alzheimer's early on. Not with the usual blood tests or memory tests, but by cracking a code hidden deep in our sense of smell. Plus, it's the editor for Merriam-Webster on the words that defined this march. That's the Curiosity Desk today at 1 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Rogers Fish Company, founded by Roger Berkowitz, offering an array of New England seafood and entrees shippable anywhere in the U.S. More at rogersfishcompany.com. And the DeMoore McKim School of Business at Northeastern University, where graduate students can build vital business skills through experience. Business Bootcamp Series, April 13th through 17th. northeastern.edu/businessbootcamp.
Welcome back to BPR 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browder, live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow, in addition to Chuck Todd, 3 retired longtime players from the Boston Symphony Orchestra will join us to talk about the ouster of the music director, Andres Nelson. Friday, the governor is with us for an hour from 11 to 12. That's at the library. So after the last No Kings rally in Boston, the people's host of this show, that'd be Marjorie Egan, lamented that the music wasn't what she wanted to be. Is that fair, Marjorie?
That's right. It was a little quiet, and there were a bunch of politicians, you couldn't hear them.
Okay, so her complaints apparently were heard because Ken Casey and the Dropkick Murphys will be there. Casey, as you probably know, is no shrinking violet. The band has built its reputation on anti-fascist, pro-worker music and activism. Fan loss be damned. Here's a clip of their latest song, Citizen Ice, where they team up with Boston hardcore band Haywire for distinct criticism of Trump's immigration enforcement and those who sign up to support it. Right in the middle there, I haven't been laid in years. That was the ice person, whatever. Joining us now is Ken Casey from the Dropkick Murphys. Ken, it's great to see you as always. How are you?
Yeah.
What you didn't see there was Marjorie rocking out.
That's right. That's right. Well, I was inspired. Too scared to join the military. Too dumb to be a cop. You had great lyrics. This whole song. It was terrific. So why are you doing this? Why are you going on Saturday?
You know, I just want to be a part of anything that offers resistance to what's happening now. And as far as the band goes, our legacy has been being about this, as you introduced us, you know, anti-fascist, pro-worker, since our inception in 1996. So if that's who you've been, why in 2026 with what's going on now would you ever be silent, you know? So, and I understand there's a lot of people who listen to Dropkick Murphys who maybe they weren't around in 96, maybe they don't do a deep dive into what we're about, and they might just listen to Shipping Up to Boston and then be offended that, you know, we talked about their cult leader and they want to, but we're who we are for 30 years and we'll keep doing it. And I think in some ways we're the perfect antagonist to the MAGA movement. We don't like bullies. We have issues with authority ourselves, and you know, if someone tells us not to do something, we're probably going to do it twice as loud as if you didn't say anything. So here we are. We did the first No Kings in April of last year, and then we were on tour for the second one, and you know, we just, like I said, if there's resistance to be offered, we want to take part in it.
When you hear, I know you called out some fellow punk bands, and there's the infamous line that some people say wasn't really uttered by Michael Jordan, but let's say it anyway. You know, Republicans buy sneakers too. You acknowledge, I've seen you in interviews, that you lose fans because of this. How do you determine that's a price you're willing to pay, Ken Casey? Because of the 30-year track record. It's, you know, we're not the ones that change. A lot of these people who are MAGA now were lockstep with our message before this guy came down the escalator, started with his lies, started to divide America with the same old tropes that have been used throughout time of, you know, divide working people so that the billionaires can steal everything out the back door, whether it be immigration or trans or whatever, you know, anything to deflect and to get us taking our eyes off the big picture. So we're confident in saying this is who we are, this is who we've always been. If you're offended now, then that's your prerogative. How great is this? You know, how great do you see the threat being? And Marjorie and I say, and I hope people don't think we're being just rhetorical, we're worried that we make it through the next 2 years and 10 months. How great do you see the threat from Trump, Ken Casey?
I mean, it's almost to the point where, like they always talked about, like, you know, flood the zone, right? Where do you even start? And most people just have to, at some point, put their head in the sand. We're once again in foreign wars that nobody wants, that this guy campaigned against, on top of being in foreign wars that are depleting, you know, all our country's resources. Him and his cronies are profiting off it, anywhere from tariffs to being a traitorous insurrectionists. I mean, if this is the trajectory you're on, right, maybe we don't survive 2 years unless people grow a spine on all levels, whether it be musicians, you know, athletes, politicians, to really, like, not take the Merrick Garland, like, you know, we'll just hopefully everything will work out and we'll take the easy road. No, like people need to go to jail, or this will happen again in another 4 years or 8 years. So
we talked to you last time you were here about the fan that had the MAGA hat in the crowd of people. But I wonder, like in your life since, either with friends of yours or family or people that come to see you perform, how you engage with people that are on the other side. What do you? A lot of us wonder what to say to people that are still support Donald Trump.
Yeah, it depends on how they engage with me. Mostly, like I can usually tell when someone's so far gone. Just save your breath, because there's no coming back. And other times, no one likes to have a finger pointed at them. So when you tell someone they're wrong, I just usually like to state the most obvious facts and friends, family, but it all depends. I mean, someone might come at me argumentatively, and depends on how I woke up that day. I might want to go right back at him, or I might go, hey, good for you. People will say to us a lot at the shows, like, I'm wearing after that video came out, people say, I'm wearing my MAGA hat, and I'd like to see you take it off me. And I said, well, be our guest and wear it. We'll all know who you are by the mark of the beast on your head, and that's someone's prerogative. And like I said, I'm human. You know what I mean? So it depends on. Some days I want to be a diplomat, and some days I don't.
I don't see you as a diplomat, if you know what I mean. There, Ken Case. I just don't see it that way. It's not. So I know a couple of members of your family. Are there other members of your family who are not on board the?
God
Ken
bless
Casey
my immediate family is all on the same page.
They are. Okay.
There's no. Of drinking the Kool-Aid and, voting against personal best interest too. And,
one of them, I'm sorry, Mark.
I was just going to say, so much we talked about, it was a hesitation to put up, fought back. again tomorrow, and have a great afternoon.
From the stories of centuries past to discoveries that will define our future, how did we get here's, how-tos, and more. Journey with us down the rabbit hole on the Curiosity Desk. Coming up next on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Brightbound, helping students as young as middle school identify their strengths, explore their passions, and navigate a path to a rewarding career. Learn more at BRITE.bound.org. And the Boston Youth Symphony Orchestras presenting Spring Fanfare, an afternoon of family activities, performances, and hands-on instrument demos. March 28th at 2 at the BYSO Youth Center for Music, bysoweb.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, the mind behind GBH's Catching The Codfather, and what it's like to get feedback on your podcast from someone as loved and loathed as the Codfather himself, Carlos Rafael.
I feel like with a person like Carlos, if he loved it and was over the moon with how it was portrayed in the podcast, maybe that would be a source of concern. And if he hated it and thought it was a total character assassination, that would be a cause for concern. But he seemed to appreciate how the story was told.
Then it's not just for spoiled milk. Two neuro researchers say there's hope that a simple smell test can better detect early signs of Alzheimer's. And how does language morph and evolve when the President of the United States uses a word wrong, or the wrong word? We'll ask the editor of Springfield-based Merriam-Webster. It's all ahead this hour on the Curiosity Desk.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Iran is responding to a U.S. 15-point proposal to end the war in Iran. According to Iran State TV, quoting a senior unnamed official, the Iranian government is rejecting that plan. Iran says it'll end the war and strikes on its neighbors only if the U.S., amongst other things, pays Iran war damages and reparations. Here's NPR's Emily Fang.
The U.S. has been pushing Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and let energy exports flow to the rest of the world again. Iran has refused. An Iran state broadcaster reports a senior political security official has rejected a U.S. proposal, setting out 5 conditions. These include ending the war only if the U.S. stopped assassinating Iranian leaders and setting up mechanisms to ensure the U.S. could not wage war on Iran again. The official also asked for the U.S. to pay for war damages. Joint U.S. and Israeli strikes on Iran have hit thousands of targets, including many government buildings, gas pipelines, schools, and hospitals. Iran also demanded the U.S. recognize its sovereign right to control the Strait of Hormuz. Emily Fang, NPR News, Van, Turkey.
Now to Lebanon, where NPR's Lauren Fair reports Iran-backed fighters have been locked in battle with Israeli forces.
We've been hearing loud booms through the night. Israel says it's targeting Hezbollah militants in Beirut's suburbs, so just south of where I am. You know, Hezbollah is a powerful force in Lebanese politics, distinct from the government. It's backed by Iran. Israel says it's killed commanders of Iran's Revolutionary Guards here inside Lebanon.
Human rights groups say the cost of civilian lives in the country has been disproportionate. The Lebanese government says more than 1,000 people have been killed this month, including 33 lives lost yesterday. It also says nearly a fifth of the entire population in Lebanon has been displaced. Still, no sign of relief for air travelers at multiple major U.S. airports who've been enduring lengthy lines at security checkpoints with ongoing TSA staffing shortages. Many workers have called out sick or quit. Others have been working for weeks without pay. The acting TSA administrator describes the reality at airports as she testified today at a congressional hearing into security gaps in the wake of the DHS funding lapse.
During the 43-day shutdown last fall, TSA experienced a 25% increase in TSO separations when compared to that same time period the year before. We have already lost over 480 TSOs this shutdown, and our call-out rates have accelerated as our workforce was still reeling from the last shutdown.
At last check on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was up 250 points, or more than 0.5% at 46,374. The S&P's risen 0.5% as well. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. New research shows a continuing problem in Massachusetts of psychiatric patients languishing in emergency departments as they wait for treatment. The issue is emergency department boarding has been a long-standing problem, largely caused by a shortage of inpatient psychiatric beds. Dr. Laura Nasuti is with the Massachusetts Health Policy Commission, which conducted the study.
While behavioral health emergency department boarding has improved in the state since the height of the boarding crisis in 2021, more than 1 in 3 behavioral health emergency department patients spend 12 or more hours waiting in the ED.
The report says for all patients entering the emergency department, Massachusetts has the second longest wait times for treatment in the nation. Well, tomorrow, Thursday, is Equal Pay Day, and data from the Boston Women's Workforce Council shows that when it comes to workforce equity, the gender wage gap is narrowing, but the racial wage gap is getting wider. The data shows that women in Greater Boston now earn 88 cents for every dollar a man earns, a 9-cent increase from 2023 and the second consecutive reporting cycle with an increase. However, the racial wage gap widened to 31 cents. That's a 4-cent increase from 2023, also the second consecutive increase. Employees of color now earn 69 cents for every dollar earned by a white employee. Mixture of sun and clouds today, cloudy and 40 overnight. We're at 50 degrees in Boston right now. I'm Henry Santoro. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include FJC, a foundation of donor-advised funds working to maximize the impact of charitable giving and to create customized philanthropic solutions.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. When fishing mogul Carlos Rafael was arrested in 2016 for smuggling, conspiracy, and falsifying records, it rocked the New Bedford fishing community. Now, 10 years later, Season 3 of the Big Dig podcast is taking a closer look at that story and taking listeners down to the docks to get to the bottom of who Raphael really is in Catching the Codfather. GBH's Ian Coss is the mind behind this 6-episode project and joined us to talk about how the story came together.
So good to be here.
So I want to start at the very end of your final episode of this podcast, episode 6, and you're talking to our main character, Carlos Rafael. And you mentioned at the very end that you had sort of done this interview with him and then kind of went, yeah, I don't know that there's a huge story here, and kind of put it on the shelf for a while. So how far back does this go? And at what point did you sort of reverse track and say, oh, no, wait a minute, this is something here?
Right. Yeah, so that first interview I did in December of 2023. So it was over 2 years ago now. And at the time, I was just sort of poking around for story ideas. And Carlos just struck me as an intriguing character. That was sort of really, it was not a very in-depth look I was taking.
You're just like, here's a guy with an interesting story. I'm just going to roll tape.
Here's a guy. I'm just going to reach out to him. He agreed to meet with me. He agreed to talk. But I didn't really know what the bigger story was and why it mattered. So I was I basically put it on the shelf for about a year. I ended up doing a whole other series about the state lottery and gambling. And then as I was wrapping up that series, a couple things happened. One is that there was this Supreme Court case that, and this is very nerdy, and we don't have to go too deep into it, but in the summer of 2024, there was this Supreme Court case that got a lot of coverage at the time that was all about sort of like the future of environmental regulation and how the government makes rules and agencies like EPA and NOAA and so forth. And the case was brought by a group of fishermen. And so it immediately, it kind of triggered this
the spidey sense, the
interesting
tingle.
Fishing.
Yeah.
Fishing back in the news. And it felt to me, kind of literally connected in that it was truly fishermen working under the same system of regulations that Carlos Rafael, that guy I'd interviewed, was working under. But it also just felt kind of symbolic of like, yeah, it is kind of right that it's a group of fishermen who are taking on this kind of like pillar of government regulatory law.
Yeah.
And so it was after that, I circled back to the case, and then I decided to go out and do some other interviews, talk to, people who worked in fishing regulation, talk to people around the port. And very quickly, I got this much more complicated image of Carlos than I had gotten from that first interview. And that's what really kind of caught my attention.
How difficult was it to cultivate Carlos in the first place? Was he just willing? Did you send him an email or just give him a call and immediately he was like, I'll talk to you? Cold called him. And was he game from the start?
And I had no, introduction or any kind of personal connection. It was, just found his number, cold called him.
Yeah.
He picked up. I think more than anything, it was about timing.
Yeah.
I know for a fact that after he was arrested and went to prison, turned down a lot of interview requests. I also know that since I spoke to him, he has turned down interview requests. So I think I caught him at a moment where he was not in any legal trouble and wanted to put his version of the story out there because he's always felt that he was unfairly treated in the media. And so he was game to talk, and we spent about 2 hours together that first time I met him.
Have you talked to him since this has come out into the world? Do you have a sense of how he feels about what you've put into the world?
I have, yeah. We spoke right after the first episode came out, and he said, I can't quote exactly what he said,
Sure.
but he
paraphrasing here.
He said something to the effect of, "I appreciated what you did. You're a straight shooter."
Nice. That must feel pretty good.
So I took that as, it's funny I feel like with a person like Carlos, if he loved it and was over the moon with the treatment, of how it was portrayed in the podcast, maybe that would be a source of concern. And if he hated it and thought it was a total character assassination, that would be a cause for concern. But he seemed to appreciate how the story was told.
You're listening to The Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with GBH's Ian Coss about how he produced the 6-episode series Catching The Codfather, the latest from the man behind The Big Dig. How about some of the other sources that you talk to? How hard was it to find people and get them to talk? I mean, as you mentioned, it's a complicated story. It's a contentious story in some ways. It includes fishermen, but it also includes government officials, including, folks who are involved in law enforcement, right? So you have this vast range of characters to talk with. How easy/hard was it to get folks to talk with you?
It's interesting. This is a story that some people really wanted to talk about it, and some people really didn't want to talk about it. In the law enforcement bucket, actually, people were very willing to talk.
Really? They got their guy.
Because they got their guy. This is like a great win for the IRS and, the Coast Guard and the federal agencies, the federal prosecutor. They used all these elaborate investigative techniques. And they totally
they're
pulled it
going
off.
undercover as Russian buyers. I mean, you're right. They look awesome.
So it was almost like weirdly easy. We reached out. My co-producer Isabel Hibbard reached out to the press media person at the IRS, and very quickly got us an interview with the case agent, Ron Mullet. He's still based out of Rhode Island. We went down to the field office, talked to him right there. Facilitated interviews with the undercover agents, which you hear some of in the podcast. we had to disguise their voices, but I was able to talk at length with them about their whole undercover process, how they prepare for it. Every time I asked the IRS for something, it was always yes. So again, that was the case. And it was the same with the U.S. Attorney's Office. They provided, you hear in the podcast, all these undercover recordings, right?
Yeah.
From the sting operation.
Yeah.
That all came from the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Wow.
I just reached out and said, hey, could I have all the audio that was entered into the public record for the Carlos Rafael case? And they sent me a Dropbox folder with a bunch of MP3 files and an Excel spreadsheet.
They were like,
explaining what
here's a
everything
gold
was.
mine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so there were those people. However, within NOAA, that's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, within the fishing regulatory community, this case is a lot more, and I would say within the fishing industry itself, it was a lot more mixed. There are a lot of people, and we hear from some of them in the series, notably John Bullard, who was sort of the top local regulator for NOAA. And John really feels that the Carlos Rafael story has been totally overplayed.
Yeah.
It's not representative of the port, of the industry, and that all, by retelling the story, all we're doing is giving attention to someone who doesn't deserve it.
Yeah.
So I encountered that perspective as well.
Where are some of the places that you ended up just physically going to report the story? I mean, at one point you mentioned there's a fisherman, Rodney Avila, who's kind of a main character in this. I think you just kind of offhandedly mentioned that you're interviewing him in a truck outside of a Dunkin' Donuts, which is like the most, kind of New England thing you could possibly do.
Yep.
But there are these places like the port in New Bedford and the fish market. These are scenes throughout this series. Like, where you presumably went to all these places, sometimes numerous times. Where are some of the places you went?
Probably the most surprising place for me that this took me was the fish auction.
Yeah.
So the vast majority of the seafood that's landed in the port of New Bedford all comes through this one auction house, which you hear about a lot in the series. And to their credit, once again, I just went in the front door, called the front office, told them what I was working on, and asked if I could come and watch as a boat unloaded. And they were like, sure, come anytime. And they just, I went to the loading dock, because I should just set the scene, for folks who have not spent time in New Bedford. It's not the wooden dock, quaint little shacks
it is
and
an
boats.
Industrial landscape.
Yeah, it's an industrial landscape. So you go up to the loading dock. There's this row of docks, and you can't even see the water at this point. For all you know, you're just in an industrial park somewhere. There's just a buzzer at the door, and you buzz, and it rings. They let you in. There's a little office there. And suddenly you're in this world of, it's very damp and cold, and there's industrial, HVAC running, and, refrigerators the size of a warehouse. And then you go around this corner and there's an opening the size of a garage door. And suddenly you see the water. And you don't see any, it looks like, you could just step out that door and you fall out into the water.
Yeah.
Just like this door to nowhere. And so I went there as one of the fishing boats was unloading, and it could stand in that loading dock, now the sort of dock side loading dock, I guess, and just watch as this boat works its way in. And it was amazing. As soon as the boat landed, the captain sort of, waved at me, and I climbed on board the boat, and I went and looked down in the hold, went up in the deck. And I'll tell you the thing that just that experience of watching the boat unload and going exploring the boat, the thing that reinforced for me more than anything else is why commercial fishing is the most dangerous job in America.
Why so?
Because you hear about, just recently, there was a tragic event where a fishing boat out of Gloucester sank.
Yeah.
7 lives were lost. You hear about those cases. What you don't hear about as much is just the amount of injury and death that can occur just from the gear on the boat. I mean, if you think about a fishing boat, you're out on, everything's wet, everything's cold, everything's moving. You have all these heavy lines under tension, steel cables that have nets, that have pulleys, that have dredges. Things are moving, there are hydraulics, and truly just watching from the side as the boat was unloaded, as this big basket of fish would be pulled out, as they would swing it across the deck, as the cables were coming. It just, I had a moment of, wow, I really need to stand out of the way because you could get really hurt very easily here.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with GBH's Ian Coss about the Catching the Codfather, the latest podcast, 6-episode podcast from the team behind The Big Dig. One of the things I love about doing this job, being, in radio, reporting things, is you get to learn, all the time. Every news story you got to learn something about. But when you get in depth over, 6 episodes in the way you do with a podcast, presumably you learn a lot. What are some of the things, besides the obvious? I mean, obviously, I would imagine you know much more about fishing and the fishing industry than you did going into this. But what are some of the things maybe that you didn't expect to learn as much about that you learned a bunch about?
So the series itself is really focused on the fishing industry, where the fish comes from. But through it, I mean, I eat fish. I love fish.
Yeah.
I've always said that, this is a little morbid, but if I were on death row and they came what's your last meal?
Oh, so you love fish.
It would be a plate of fish and chips.
Okay, so you really like fish.
Okay, so that's a little bit of context for me, maybe more than you needed. But through this, talking to folks in the industry, I did also learn a lot about the food side of it. And we don't really cover this that much in the podcast. But one of the facts that really connects the two, the sort of the supply side and the demand side, is coming to appreciate the fact that Americans are just really conservative when it comes to seafood.
Conservative in what way?
Basically in what species we eat. So if you think about the ocean, right? The oceans are home to thousands, tens of thousands of species of fish and shellfish and all kinds of things. If you look at the consumption of seafood in the United States of America, 86% of it is 10 species.
Oh, wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's your shrimp.
Yep.
It's your tuna fish.
Salmon.
Cod.
Yep.
Haddock. Tilapia. It's a big one.
Yep.
It's basically out of the whole ocean of all those species.
We eat 10 guys.
We basically eat 10 things. And this, of course, this has real consequences in terms of sustainability and conservation.
Yeah.
We don't say this explicitly, but we treat the ocean like a factory farm.
Yeah.
I want to order up all my fillets of salmon, just like I want to have a big, field that only grows corn. Except one of those things is a wild ecosystem where that salmon, is all mixed up with other fish. And this was vividly illustrated for me by I took a trip at one point to a supermarket, to just a Stop and Shop in Falmouth, Mass.
Okay.
With a marine biologist named Linda Desprez. And we basically walked around the seafood section together, and it's what you expect. It's, wow, shrimp, more shrimp, pre-cooked shrimp,
jumbo shrimp,
marinated shrimp, imported shrimp, domestic. You can go on and on. You look at the freezer case, and it's fish sticks, fish cakes, and then you go to the fish counter, and it's truly cod, haddock, cod, salmon, cod, salmon,
tuna,
right?
Yeah.
It really is striking just how consistent that is. And Linda, part of the reason I was talking with Linda is that she used to work with GBH connection here, Julia Child, famous for the French chef, who back in the day, back in the 70s and 80s, she really took on this mission of championing the so-called trash fish, the underutilized species that came up in the nets, right, with the cod and the haddock, but that there wasn't really a market for. And she told me this great story about monkfish in particular, which you would never find in a supermarket. But Julia really made an effort to highlight and to showcase it on our show. And I think we have a clip of that episode.
And somebody described this fish as a great big mouth and a small tail surrounding a stomach. And this is a North Atlantic fish, and it also has various other names. goosefish, bellows fish, all mouth, that's a good name, fishing frog, devilfish, mulligut, and angler. What's interesting about it, it looks so big, this weighs about 20 pounds, but all you eat is the tail.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so truly only Julia Child could sell the monkfish to the American public. Because truly this is it looks like a prehistoric dinosaur kind of animal.
Yeah.
It is a crazy looking fish. Linda had a pretty good line about it too.
If people saw it, they probably would never buy it. It is unique in its way in the world.
It is unique. And to this day, you will never go to a fish counter and see the whole monkfish laid out there. All you'll see is that the tail section.
Yeah.
I think it's delicious. So personally, if you cook seafood and you want to try something different.
So there you go. Recommendation coming your way from Ian Coss, who we just learned would have fish and chips as his final meal if he were on death row. So he knows from fish, and you say monkfish, go for it.
Yeah, especially for like a chowder or a stew. It holds up really well in a fish chowder. So
next podcast going to be about cooking fish. Do we have an episode about cooking fish somewhere?
We have a bonus episode that's going to come out next week.
Oh, no kidding.
That is all about the sort of like the food side of the story and how you buy your seafood, what you should know about your seafood. So stay tuned for that in the feed.
You know, we mentioned Carlos Rafael. He is the Codfather. Divisive figure, to be sure. And it seems in, one of the questions you are kind of grappling with through the whole of this podcast, in addition to sort of understanding the fishing industry, is kind of Carlos Rafael, good guy or bad guy, product that was inevitable, or, somebody who took it under his own advisement to behave the way he did. Has that played in terms of reaction to this podcast? Have you seen the audience dividing themselves up in the way that it seems almost everybody does when it comes to Carlos Rafael?
Yeah, it's funny you ask that, because it truly, that divide has been perfectly mirrored in the response to the series. I try not to spend too much time in the comments.
Yeah,
but
probably wise.
If you look at the YouTube comments for episode 1 in particular of the series, it is fascinating. You scroll through there and you see these comments like, Carlos Rafael is a legend. He's a hero. God bless him. So glad he's still out there doing, you know what I mean? You see this kind of reverence, and you also see comments like, how is this guy not in jail? This guy gives the whole industry a bad name. So yeah, he remains divisive as ever.
That was GBH's Ian Coss, producer and host of The Big Dig, Scratch and Win, and now Catching the Codfather. By the way, Catching the Codfather, it's out right now in its entirety on all of the streaming platforms, so if you are inclined, check it out. As for us, just ahead is the key to unlocking the secrets about what is going on in our brains right under our noses. We'll talk with 2 researchers who say no. It's in our noses. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH. Don't go away.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Boston Ballet is going electric. With its latest production, The Dream, the company pairs a classic Frederick Ashton ballet with a bold new work by Michael Strohmeyer, featuring legendary guitarist Reeves Gabrels of The Cure, playing electric guitar in the pit. It's a striking collision of ballet and rock. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Rogers Fish Company, founded by Roger Berkowitz. Their signature double clam chowder is available for purchase at all Market Basket locations. More at rogersfishcompany.com.
And Bernadine Sung Megasin at Dream Mega International Realty, dedicated to helping buyers and sellers across Greater Boston, offering market insight and guidance through each step of the process. More at homesbybernadine.com.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We're streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. What if you could take a smell test and learn whether or not you're at risk of developing neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's? No brain scans necessary. That is what our next guests are working towards, because humans' ability to smell sits at an important region in the brain that can be a bellwether for brain disease, that if it's detected early enough. With us in studio is Mark Albers, a neurologist specializing in memory and olfactory disorders at Mass General Hospital and Harvard Medical School. And back again is the one and only Sandeep Robert Datta. He's a professor in Harvard Medical School's Department of Neurobiology. Welcome, Mark. Bob, it's great to have you back again.
Nice to be here. Great to be here.
All right, Mark, we're going to get into what you do shortly, but Bob Datta, I'm going to ask you to start us off just with a little bit of a refresher. And I know this is going to sound silly, but what is smell, right? I think we know what smell is, but not the way you know what smell is. What is smell?
So smells are small molecules that come floating off of objects in the world and are carried into our noses by plumes of air. And so you can imagine that if you're smelling your morning coffee, there's something like 800 separate small chemicals that are floating off of your coffee, and your nose detects those chemicals, and somehow your brain takes all of that information and synthesizes it into one perception, the perception of like this delicious morning coffee that you're about to drink.
So when we say the brain processes it, how?
Right, so that's a long-standing question. Both Mark and I have been working on this problem for a very long time.
Mark, do you have a quick answer for us? How?
No, I think that there's multiple circuits. So there's a parallel stream into the brain, and then those neurons or those nerve cells project to multiple different areas that each do a different task. And so with the idea of being able to assess these different decision makings with smells, then we can press on different circuits that have different vulnerabilities related to neurodegenerative disease.
So yeah, I mean, just kind of give me the nucleation point or something around, because I think if I'm not a researcher, and I think most of us are not, this idea that you're gonna be able to do something like have early detection of neurodegenerative diseases and you're going to detect that by having people do smell tests sort of seems, counterintuitive or crazy, but it seems too simple. But like, why? What's the connection here?
So with the neurodegenerative diseases, they start 20 years before people get symptoms.
Wow.
That's what we're seeing. And so some of the most vulnerable circuits that develop pathology early in that course are these circuits that process smells. And so and we can speculate why, but in Parkinson's disease, you see Lewy bodies. In Alzheimer's disease, you see tangles. And even in patients with chronic traumatic encephalopathy after repetitive non-concussive head traumas, you can see tau deposit into the first relay station in the brain, the olfactory bulb. And so because of that, then the idea is that this is a vulnerable circuit, and if we ask a person to make decisions based on smell, because typically, as Bob was saying, when you're smelling something, you're incorporating both visual, auditory, and olfactory stimulation. And what we do is isolate just smell and ask you to make a decision based on inputs just from smell. And so we're really pressing on those circuits. And the idea is that can we pick up vulnerabilities early before people have symptoms and use this as a screen? So not that this will be diagnostic, but this will be a screen. So it's a brain health test. If you pass, your brain looks good. But if not, then we hope we can detect something.
Maybe we do some further investigating.
Further investigations.
So the first thing that springs to my mind, and one of the complications of this seems to me might be the fact that, like all of our other senses, as we age, just as a normal part of the aging process, right, it becomes less acute over time. And there's, also, we've all just been through this, rise of COVID, and there are other things that, besides brain disease that can impact how well I smell. So how do you separate that out as you're investigating in this way? How do we know it's not just normal aging or something else?
Absolutely. So it's a great question. So there is decline with the sense of smell with aging. However, now that we're understanding more about the process of neurodegenerative disease, I think some of that was attributed to aging is actually the first parts of neurodegeneration.
Okay.
And so I think we're continuing to study people. And I think in the end, the more data, so what we're excited about this smell test is that we can scale it and collect lots and lots of data to address your question. In addition. And so being able to amass large numbers of data with other outcomes, we can start to sort that out. But we do the studies in patients that are at higher risk for neurodegeneration versus healthy controls and look for differences.
You listen to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with Mass General Hospital's neurologist, Dr. Mark Albers, and Bob Datta about smell as a key to detecting diseases. Bob, what would you add here at this point?
Yeah, so one of the interesting things about smell is the way in which smells are detected in your nose.
Yeah.
So you're used to thinking of, maybe you learned in school that like once you make neurons in your brain, they can never be replaced. Like you have some set of neurons that makes you who you are and you never grow new ones. That's generally true, but it's not true in your nose. And so your nose is constantly throughout your life rebuilding itself, making new neurons that then communicate with the brain. And one of the things that we know happens with aging is that process slows down. And so your nose's ability to repair itself after you get a infection, for example, or an injury, that slows down. And over time, the number of neurons that are in your nose slowly depletes as you get older and older and older. And so we know a little bit of something about why it is that we lose our sense of smell when we age. That's one part of it. And one thing that's probably true, I wonder what you think, Mark, is that process is accelerated by neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease or Parkinson's.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And a colleague of ours that we're both collaborating with, Brad Goldstein at Duke, has recently published a study where he's starting to look and be able to use a small brush to get up and actually sample those neurons in patients, and we're also doing it at Mass General Hospital.
Fascinating.
So we can, so the idea is that if you have, to your question, if you do score a risk, type of concern, then the next step, one of the next steps could end up being, this is still research, but it could end up being where we are able to sample the nerve cells and look for neurodegenerative markers, look for
So literally get a physical sample, just like go right up the nose and just collect a few.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what's neat about this is that these are really the only accessible neurons in a living person. So we're thinking all about brain diseases and identifying biomarkers for brain diseases and figuring out how diseases might evolve in different people. One thing you'd want to do is to be able to sample actual neurons from a person. And that's really, really hard. But the one place you can do it is in your nose. And so I think there's a lot of excitement about the idea of looking at nose samples from actual humans and studying them to understand disease.
So let's talk about this smell test. What is it? How does it work? It looks to me like you might have brought some here into the studio or some version of it or something. So what do we got here?
Yeah, so this is the Aroma Brain Health Test. And it's developed. So the odors are naturalistic odors prepared by IFF. And so
what is IFF?
International Flavors and Fragrances. It's a perfumer that specializes. It's the largest fragrance house in the country, and they're complicated mixtures of odors. Just as Bob was hinting at, that we want to stress the circuit with complicated mixtures of odors, and then ask the questions. So it's done at home. We can mail it through to anyone. We've had studies done in Indonesia, in Colombia, and all around the country. We've in Puerto Rico, we have it in English and Spanish. It's all done on the web, and then it takes about 30 minutes or so, and the results come back quickly. And so with this, we've been able to. It's now out and available, but we've been able to look for different diseases such as Alzheimer's disease or risk of Alzheimer's disease, as well as in former NFL football players looking for signatures.
CTE stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And so
can I take this here? Like, how does this work? What do I do?
Yeah, so you go to testyourbrainhealth.com and log in, and then you're off and going. So that's a test of odor intensity, odor identification, odor memory, odor discrimination, and then what we call metacognition. How confident are you in your answers?
So if folks are watching us on the YouTube stream, I think you get a look at what this, just a sheet of paper with a couple of circles on it. So I just peel one of these. I just like scratch and sniff, peel and sniff. So I just peel this off and I take a sniff.
Yep.
All right, I smell something.
That's the practice order. That's the.
So that's this is the sorbet, so to speak.
That's what you. So then you peel it off. The instructions. You peel it off and then you put it back on. So that
I see.
Then,
so
then
I don't want to like
otherwise
contaminate.
Yeah.
What does it smell like? I don't know, honestly. I can't really identify what that practice order is. All right, so now I go to A and I just try it.
So
right, peel it off. Go ahead.
And so when you're asked to identify an order, we actually give you 4 choices because just as you're saying, it is too difficult to be able to do that. I can tell you 4 choices and you can pick.
Go ahead.
See if you can pick from that one. So the 4 choices would be popcorn, grape, mint, or cedar.
I would say it's somewhere between mint and cedar. It's to me. A. It's definitely not popcorn. Or are you going to be like, no, it's popcorn?
No, it's not popcorn.
I think I would say cedar.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. and then I go on to B. I just go on to B. Oh, B is different. B is clove, maybe?
It is a very good, it's not clove, but it's a very good guess.
It's clove-like. What is B? What are my options?
So I have to remember myself now. the 4 choices. I can tell you what it is, but the 4 choices.
No. So what is B? Just tell me.
Smoke.
Oh, smoke. Interesting. Well, I've got clove cigarette.
Yeah,
smoke,
exactly.
They're kind of mixed up in my head. You're listening to The Curiosity Desk. We're talking with Mass General Hospital's neurologist, Dr. Mark Albers and Bob Datta about smell as key to detecting diseases. Okay, so who is this for now? This is something that people ought to do. People who are worried, people who are aging, anybody, or who should be doing this and why?
So it's really designed as a risk, for brain health, as an assessment for brain health.
Yeah.
So if you're saying as you age, you're starting to wonder about that. Let's say you have a family history. I have lots of patients with family history of memory problems, and they come and ask, what should I do? And they want to get checked out. So this would be one thing you could do to start to see if you have, good brain health, in which case you should do lifestyle interventions that have been shown to put off the onset of dementia. On the other hand, if there's a risk concern, then, and most people who score in that risk brain, they don't realize there's any change in their sense of smell. It's not like you notice it, but it's only when we probe it. And then they could bring that up with their doctor, the primary care physician, and say, what are the next steps?
Hey, I took this test. Here's what the results were. Is there something I should do here? Interesting.
Exactly.
All right, two questions. I wish we had more time. One question is, so if we're looking at this part of the body and saying this may be a place where we can early detect these diseases, is it also a place where I can try to upkeep my health in order to stave off risk?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's been some studies looking at sensory stimulation overall, so visual, auditory, and a little bit with smell, in terms of as a way to kind of stimulate the brain. What I usually tell my patients is to do those activities that you're emotionally connected to. So if there's smells that you care about, or tasks that you really love to do, then I think that's how the brain, Bob can speak to this, but it uses emotion to prioritize and process sensory inputs. So if you have an emotional connection to something, it's more likely to drive plasticity, in my view. And then, so I think that those types of activities you want to have that are not like one thing, but they're individual for you because that's what you love.
Interesting, Bob.
Yeah, so one thing that's known is that if you're hard of hearing and you're older, not being able to hear is actually a risk for cognitive decline. And an intervention you can make that will actually stave off that cognitive decline is to wear hearing aids. And so engaging with your sensory environment is really, really important. And I think it's probably true that smell is no exception, that being in a vibrant olfactory environment that's emotionally relevant to you, like your kitchen, might be really good for your brain health.
I wish we had more time. Like I said, I feel like we're just scratching and sniffing the surface here. But thank you both for being with us on the Curiosity Desk. We've been speaking with Mark Albers, a neurobiologist specializing in memory and olfactory disorders at Mass General Hospital and Harvard Medical School, and Sandeep Robert Datta, a professor in Harvard Medical School's Department of Neurobiology. Thank you both for being with us.
Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Stay with us. Just ahead, we'll look into the words that defined the month of March with the editor of Springfield's own, Merriam-Webster. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH. Stay with us.
Democratic Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey thinks his party's most urgent challenge is leadership, but he's optimistic for the next generation of potential Democratic leaders.
To me, it is a time of great fear and great courage, great worry, but great hope. And I want us to seize this moment.
What leadership role he might take going forward on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Brightbound. It's never too early to start thinking about what comes next, and Brightbound helps students from middle school through high school discover rewarding careers. Learn more at brite.bound.org. And Direct Federal Credit Union, a Needham-based financial institution providing loans, saving solutions, and financial wellness resources for members across every stage of life. Learn more by visiting direct.com. Direct Federal, member NCUA.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Here with us now to look back on and into the words that you were searching for the most this March. We're joined via Zoom by Peter Sokolowski. He is editor-at-large for Merriam-Webster. Peter, welcome back to the Curiosity Desk. Great as always to see you.
It's great to be with you.
So, Peter, one of the things, I have learned over the years from talking to you is that one of the things that really drives people to the dictionary to look things up are big stories in the news. And I'm going to take a guess this March. There's been a very big story in the news, which is what is happening in Iran. And I'm going to guess that has driven people to the dictionary.
Well, absolutely. And the dictionary is an interesting sort of optic with which to see the news. It's a prism through which we can read the news. And what I mean by that is some words send us to the dictionary, and some words don't. In this case, we see a word among several that is kind of a common word, but seemed very specific. And this is a pattern that I see. Words that are looked up that maybe you wouldn't look up on a normal day, but in this particular instance seems more specific or more special. And that's the word excursion in this case. That's the word that President Trump has been using and has been used to describe. And of course, as you know, there was a sort of debate and still is a debate. What is this? Is this a war? Is this a police action? Is it a military action? Is it an incursion?
Right.
And there are even some people who suspect that a confusion between the words incursion and excursion is part of why President Trump has used this word. And that kind of confusion is a good reason to look it up in the dictionary.
Indeed. We have a little sound from President Trump using this word. Let's hear it.
We did a little excursion. We had to take this little few weeks of excursion, but it's been incredible.
So, Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that word excursion being used in this particular instance is certainly not common. That's not commonly how we use the word excursion.
Well, I mean, I would have thought an excursion is more like a little vacation.
Right. I mean, that to me is what it's...
Absolutely. It has a positive connotation. And incursion, on the other hand, can mean a violent action. These are cousins. These words are related, and they're related through a Latin word. This is one of those Lego words from Latin that has come into English. In other words, you can piece them together. Curare is the root word, and that means to run. So excursion, a running out of. Incursion, a running into. And there are other cousin words like the word currency, which means something that moves or flows. A current, like a water current, is something that flows. The word course, as in a race course, is the same word. The French word course, meaning race, is from the same root. And we have words like concurrent, and even the word cursor, which means, little runner, right? That's what it literally is. So this is one of those Latin Lego words. And, there are other words that explicit and implicit and complicit. Plicare means to fold together. So complicit, folded together, explicit to fold out, implicit to fold in. So the thing is, these Lego words are a little bit poetic because we can piece together their meanings.
Very interesting stuff. What else are people looking up?
Well, also related to this Iran war is the word quagmire. And unsurprisingly, this has historic connotations. Quagmire was the term that was famously used to describe the Vietnam conflict, the Vietnam War, but also the sort of forever wars of this century, Iraq and Afghanistan. And quagmire is a fun word to say. It's an interesting word.
It is. Quagmire. I think anything that starts with a Q is a little bit fun.
And most of the words that start with a Q do have Latin and French roots. This one doesn't. We say officially that this has an unknown origin, but it does seem that these are two words, quag and mire, that both mean essentially marsh or swamp. And it is kind of a fun thing to think that this was a compound word made up of two parts that are kind of synonymous.
Yeah.
And in fact, quagmire comes to the language in the 16th century, in the 1500s. And what's interesting to me is to see that it is the survivor. In other words, there were several variants like qualmire, quaymire, quavemire, quabmire, quadmire, and quakemire. But quagmire with a G is the survivor.
Oh, so the marketplace has weighed in over the years to say that the most fun of these to say is clearly quagmire.
Absolutely. I think marketplace is a great way to think of the way that language evolves, because the standards of language are made up by two criteria, which is frequency and familiarity. And so the one that you like saying the most might be the one that wins.
We're speaking with Peter Sokolowski, editor-at-large for Merriam-Webster, who's always keeping his eye on the data, and we're talking about some of the words that really stood out in the month of March with people looking up. Other words that are related to the war in Iran also on your list?
Well, absolutely. And the word hegemony is a classic vocabulary word for not just this occasion, but for any occasion. But this is a word that turns up in a lot of the coverage of this conflict. Hegemony referring to the United States, referring to Israel, sometimes referring to some other powers in the Middle East. And hegemony, simply means strong influence or authority over others. It's a synonym of the word domination. But it's also one of those words that we see more than we hear.
Yeah.
It's hard to pronounce. And we give three different transcriptions, three official pronunciations. There's hegemony, there's hegemony, and there's hegemony.
I was going to say, in my mind, it's hegemony. So I'm glad that is also an okay way to say it, especially since I work in radio. So.
And that's the way it looks, right? It's got that M-O-N-Y ending. And that's kind of a word part that is part of other words. And because of the stress pattern of English, hegemony, in this case, the common pronunciation puts that stress on the second syllable. But think of that pattern, M-O-N-Y.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because that's everywhere. What does that mean?
That's everywhere. Think of another stress pattern, ceremony, matrimony, patrimony, alimony, testimony, sanctimony. So this word this form is the Latin form that basically identifies an abstract noun, meaning a state or condition, like the state of matrimony, for example. And this is interesting because I'm sure that French is a derivative language, French derived from Latin, and the French version, the French variant of this is spelled M-E-N-T. And so that we have many more words in English,
right.
like the word fragment, or the word atonement, or commencement, or, you could go on. There are hundreds and hundreds of these. And in fact, etymologically, they're the same word.
Fascinating stuff. So, as we said at the start, oftentimes what you see is stories, especially big stories in the news, driving folks to the dictionary. Of course, the Iran war or excursion is a big story and has been a big story, but presumably there are other things that captured the public's imagination this month.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the Epstein files are hovering under the headlines, if not the headlines themselves. And this is a word that was rising from January through February because this story is a continuing story that seems to be a thread that we keep pulling. And the word is tranche. And that's an interesting pronunciation. We only give the one with that nasalized vowel, that French-sounding vowel. Tranche. And so it's Tranche. And tranche is just the French word for slice. But it's used in economic terms to mean the slice of a pie. We often register economic data in a kind of pie chart. And a tranche in terms of debt or banking or bonds is a slice of those investments. And that's also a slice of the files, of the Epstein files. They're referred to as a new tranche, that is to say a new batch, a new grouping of these terms. And tranche is an interesting word because it's one of those French words, this is one of my little favorite corners of the language, words that we have borrowed twice. You know, when we borrow foreign words in English, we use that word borrow, first of all, and we never give them back. That's
right.
one point.
So steal would be another word
when
for
we
it.
steal these words. But tranche is one of these words that we've borrowed twice from French, and always the second time is more specific, more narrow. In this case, tranche is the same word as trench, because tranche just means a slice or a cut. A trench is a cut in the earth. And so they are actually the same word. And think of other words. You might never associate them, but they're words that have been borrowed twice. The second borrowing is always more recent. So moral and morale, urban and urbane, feeble and foible. But there are plenty of these, like the word critic and the word critique. And notice how critique is just a special version of a criticism.
Right.
But we have words like genre, as in genre fiction. It's the same word as gender. And we also have the word genteel, which means kind of polite. And of course, that's the same word as gentle.
We're talking with Peter Sokolowski, editor-at-large for Merriam-Webster, about the words of the month, so to speak, in the month of March. Peter, I know we live in highly politicized times and politics dominates our news, but is there anything non-political that people were looking up in March?
Well, you know, one thing that's for sure is that entertainment drives dictionary traffic, especially movies, because they are part of a national conversation, and obviously the Oscars. One word that we saw spike during the Oscars is the word cinematography, and that's sort of just interesting.
Oh, that is interesting.
It's clear to me that people look up words, you know, while they're watching the broadcast. And I just think that people wanted to see more information. I think people look up words for different reasons. Sometimes it's for spelling. Sometimes it's for phonetics, as we hegemony. But sometimes I think it's for something that I would call encyclopedic information. In other words, what does a cinematographer do?
Right.
And I call that encyclopedic information. For example, in the dictionary, you can look up, Caesar salad and Cobb salad, and you'll get a little recipe because we have to distinguish the two. And in terms of cinematographer, it's someone who operates a movie camera, a projector, a theater, or a show. And what's interesting to me, most interesting about this particular word is its date of first known use. Another little favorite thing of mine is to see which year a word was used for the first time. And that information is given in the dictionary. And in this case, it's 1896, so the very dawn of cinema.
Oh, that's fascinating stuff. Peter, before I let you go, we love to look a little bit forward or kind of present and, with something that's trending or something that's caught your eye in particular this month that you're seeing that's a little bit new. You got something for us?
Well, the job is revision. The job of making dictionary definitions is revision, always revising, always adding. I noticed also in connection to the Oscars the noun form of the word post. In other words, post, short for post-production. We'll fix it in post.
Oh, I see, yeah.
is a phrase that I've heard a lot, and that is not in the dictionary. You know, the most successful new words are the words that come in quietly or invisibly. Think of a verb that we use every day, like access, access for internet purposes. That wasn't even a verb in the dictionary 50 years ago. And today, I bet you use it 5 times a day.
Oh, wow. Yeah, sure.
And so this is the thing, is it's a word. It was familiar. Access was a noun. Of course, it was a familiar word. In this case, post now has this very narrow, very specific, I'll fix it in post, and sometimes used in a jocular way when you want to fix something or correct something after you've made a mistake.
Very good. We've been speaking with Peter Sokolowski, editor-at-large for Merriam-Webster. As always, Peter, thanks for being with us on the Curiosity Desk.
Great to chat with you. Thanks.
And before we sign off, we're going to bring in the man behind the show that is coming down the pike at you, one and only Jared Bowen from The Culture Show. How are you, Jared?
Hey there, Edgar. Great to see you.
Great to see you. What do you got on the show today?
So we're going to be talking to Mahesh Das, president of Boston Architectural College, about the rebuilding in Florida. Of course, the wildfires and that immense devastation was a year ago. So how is how is California rebuilding, and what does that mean for practices in building and fire resistance and climate resistance going forward? We'll talk about that. Plus, the Boston Ballet has a really exciting new program on right now. We'll talk to Michael Strohmeyer, who is a choreographer for a world premiere piece, and Reeves Gabrels, who is with The Cure, longtime David Bowie collaborator, and who's playing the guitar for this piece.
Very, very cool. That is Jared Bowen and The Culture Show coming at you in about a minute and a half, so don't go anywhere unless that somewhere is to the Boston Public Library where they are broadcasting today. You can go check it out for yourself. As for us, that's it. The Curiosity Desk is produced by Aidan Connolly, Rachel Armani, Olivia Corcio, Hannah Loss, and Nicole Garcia. Patty Daniels is the predicate in our sentences. Our engineer today is John the Claw Parker. Special thanks to David Goodman and Andrew Massawa for their audio engineering prowess. We will be right back here in 23 short hours on GBH 89.7 and streaming on YouTube. Until then, I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Stay curious out there.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show. Next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And the Boston Youth Symphony Orchestra is presenting Spring Fanfare, an afternoon of family activities, performances, and hands-on instrument demos. March 28th at 2 at the BYSO Youth Center for Music, bysoweb.org.
They solve murders with blood, sweat, and tears. Literally. Watch forensic scientists investigate the grisly and mystifying on the UK drama Silent Witness, tonight at 9 on GBH 44.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Culture Show News Desk, I'm Henry Santoro. The Q Division recording studios in Cambridge have been a mainstay around these parts since it first started recording bands back in 1986. The studios recorded albums by Pixies, James Taylor, Amy Mann, Fountains of Wayne, Morphine, Vapors of Morphine, among many, many others. And tomorrow night, March 26th, the studios are holding what they're calling Ain't Nothing But a House Party, a Q Division open house party. And it's sure to be a ton of fun. Performing live will be Vapors of Morphine.
Sometimes I think I must have fell on my head, 'cause I don't act right and nothing makes sense. Nah, I think I damaged my brain, yeah.
And on view in Studio B of Q Division will be a new photo exhibit from award-winning photographer Kelly Davidson. Kelly's been shooting the Boston area music scene for years, and if you're not familiar with her work, now is the time to have a meet and greet with her and check out her photos. Tickets for Ain't Nothing But a House Party are available at Eventbrite. And don't look now, but on June 30th, the Boston Pops will be joined at the Shed at Tanglewood by members of the Jerry Garcia Band Library.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, in California, the future of the American home is rising from the ashes. There, rebuilding has become a test of how to move quickly and without repeating the same mistakes. As houses in wildfire zones are built with fire-resistant materials and carefully designed details meant to keep embers out, Mahesh Das, president of Boston Architectural College, joins us to consider what the rest of us can learn from the way these communities are rebuilding. Then Boston Ballet is giving an amped-up performance, literally, as the electric guitar cuts through the orchestra pit. The sound belongs to Reeves Gabrels, the music legend of The Cure. He's joined choreographer Michael Strohmeyer for a very charged world premiere. And what can a teapot, tea table, and silver caddy tell us about the road to revolution? MFA curator Nani Gadsden joins us to trace a history steeped in ritual, social ambition, and the tensions that culminated in the Boston Tea Party. That's all right now on The Culture Show.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show, live on 89.7 from our studio at the Boston Public Library and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. We begin the show with AI Actual Intelligence, where we tap into the most interesting thinkers in our region for their algorithm-free insights. Joining us as he does every month is Mahesh Das, president of Boston Architectural College and the co-author of the graphic novella about AI titled I, Nobot. This month we're focusing on resilient architecture, the idea that homes can be built not just for beauty, but for survival. In California, where rebuilding continues after last year's wildfires in Pacific Palisades and Altadena, that means fire-resistant materials, ember-resistant vents, and landscaping that can prevent flames from reaching the front door. As California rebuilds, what lessons does that offer the rest of us? Mahesh Das, welcome back to The Culture Show. Great to see you.
Glad to be back.
Well, it's great to have you here. We are seeing, of course, the aftermath of this devastation. There has to be growth after such horror, when so many people, I think about 16,000 structures were leveled by those fires. But now we're presented with opportunity to find out how a community can rebuild and what innovation comes out of that. What do you see as being underway right now as California embarks on this process?
Yeah, Jared, I think probably this is one of the most consequential events and phenomenon of our times, particularly the Los Angeles wildfires last year. Cannot believe it has now been more than a year since the January 2025 fires in Eaton and Palisades, and they burned together about 60 square miles of area, and together they are the second worst wildfire in California, urban wildfire. And there were things that happened in the wilderness, but I think these were the urban wildfires. And I think I will start by saying, actually, as you said, we should always remember that it is about people, and the kind of suffering that people have gone through and still going through is very important, and that we approach that very concretely and not in abstraction as a wildfire and this, that, policies and all that, right? So I try to really listen to more of these stories of human suffering and what they're going through. I think that is very telling. In terms of people losing everything within a matter of minutes, and people were at work when the wildfires were going on and hear that their homes were wiped out and they were displaced in the middle of nothing. I mean, it came out of nowhere, seemingly, because the advanced warning systems also did not quite function the way they should have. So I think putting ourselves back when they began, and the kind of a sudden devastation, although people were warning about these kinds of phenomena for a long time now, that Los Angeles was ripe for something like that. But still, it was a shock. And the rebuilding process has been very slow. To date, I think only about 500 structures are in the process of being rebuilt, and only about a few dozens are actually completed. So it's a very slow process, but as you noted at the outset, this is really has transformed and is transforming how we build, what we build, with what materials we build, what are the kind of processes of regulating all of these activities, everything is changing.
Well, let's start with the individual homes, because of course there is the recognition that that wasn't an isolated incident, that any home that has to be rebuilt now needs to be able to withstand another wildfire or worse. We see the storms that are wreaking havoc all across the world. So as we begin to think about building homes, which typically were done with very inexpensive timber wood to do the framing and plywood to create our structures, what is starting to take place in its shape?
I think traditionally, when much of Los Angeles was built or was being built over the last any number of decades or century or beyond, those were wood frame structures largely. Masonry structures were fewer, but wood frame was a common construction. And therefore, it provided the fuel for the wildfire very quickly to do, but also the methods of construction and the form of the buildings, of the residences, with long eaves, or the air could get in very easily, and so could embers. And so now we are seeing a paradigm being shifted from that altogether. So the buildings now, it's not just a question of building, but it's a question of the neighborhood. It is a question of the larger region. So it's a multi-level thinking. It is, Jared, transforming everything in unbelievably comprehensive way, from permitting process, from prior permitting, self-certification, buildings prefabricated and moved on site, accessory dwelling units being brought on site, or construction on site using masonry or new types of masonry. For example, so-called SIPs, which are structural concrete insulated panels, which are both fire resistant, but also they have insulation value in there. So that is happening. And the roof systems are being transformed. Class A structures, which resist fire, they resist ignition, and they resist radiant heat. All of these are being done. So it has a lot of implications. And that is why it is so slow.
I was going to ask that because, of course, we want the rebuilding to happen. But is this something that should not necessarily be rushed? Again, acknowledging that people want to be back in their homes. They just want to have something to tether them to their ground and their lives once again. But if we're moving forward in concrete structures or building with steel rather than the wood framing that we've been so used to, or the prefab homes, well, we'll talk more about those that get moved into place, are we there yet, or are those currently being developed before they can be employed in a wide scale?
I would say that that was the concern originally at the outset, right after the wildfires, the question of looking at the vastness of the destruction, and people were concerned about these issues. Are we going to be rushing into building the same thing again and invite another wildfire? But as we see it now, that is not the case. Things are, in fact, a bit slow and cautious, and things actually cannot be rushed by virtue of the logistics, by the regulatory processes, but also by the capital it takes to actually build them.
Well, that's a big question, too, because, of course, we want safety now. We want something that's going to withstand the next 100 years for a planet that is going to be very different from the prior 100 years. However, concrete, steel, some of these other elements, foam that can be sprayed on the exterior of a home, they're more expensive. So what does this create? Because then we suddenly find ourselves, I think it's been termed climate gentrification, where you can be safe if you can afford to be safe.
Yeah, absolutely right. That the cost of construction, and in fact cost of design and construction, have gone up. And the question of affordability for a vast number of people is a question. Insurance money is either not there or is not flowing in as it should. The last resort insurance plan that the California has, a FAIR plan, that is also very slow to kick in. And so I think that is slowing things down. Maybe in the longer run, we will look at it and say it is better that it was a slow process, but it's agonizing for families, right? Who are just waiting to, even till today, to get their insurance monies. So that is one side. But in terms of the construction, so there are a number of things we need to talk about. One is not just fireproofing, where we talk about can the building materials themselves be fire resistant, but actually also the form of the building. For instance, when we talk about wildfires, we think that the fire is coming as a wall of flame and suddenly it is combusting. That is actually not the case from what I understand. It is the embers that fly miles ahead of the actual flames that get through the eaves and the vents of the building, and they cluster and they start the fires inside the building or right next to the building. And so it's really, they call it now the ignition effect as opposed to actual flame coming close by. So there are 3 levels we need to think about. You need to reduce the ignition effect, meaning that these embers are not being caught and actually starting a fire. And that means the brush and the vegetation, dry vegetation that is next to the building. So the new zoning effect is that they are creating 3 zones. So immediately next to the house, up to 5 feet is considered zone 0. And there should be nothing in there that fuels a fire. And then there is zone 1 and zone 2, 30 feet, and then you get 100 feet and something like that, where you try to clear anything that contributes to becoming a fuel for the fire. So all of that is happening, right? And then you have the building envelope. So the roof structure, which is the most prone, is being now, you need class A construction that resists ignition, active fire, or radiant heat. So as a result of any of these, it can contribute to structural failure or actually flaming and then passing on that flame.
I'm speaking with Mahesh Das, president of Boston Architectural College. We're talking about building resiliency, especially as California rebuilds after last year's wildfires. Well, the great thing about what you just said is that it's not aspirational. We know that all of the measures that you just outlined to prevent fires, to prevent embers from penetrating homes can be prevented. And there are a few different ways of doing this. One of the ones I'm most intrigued about is going back to the future, essentially. We know, where people might know, of the Sears homes that you would pick out your home out of the catalog, a prefabricated home. That went out of style, but prefabricated homes are back, and you can tell me, it seems like this would also speed things up if they can be built off-site and then just transported to their locations.
Yeah, so I think that's right. There are a few things happening, and they have different options. I would say probably we now have a wide-ranging set of options for the homeowners or building owners, whatever buildings those are. And one of them is prefabrication, because it is much easier to build the kind of ignition-resistant, fire-resistant buildings constructed in factory circumstances and brought to the site. It both reduces on-site activity and higher control over the quality of the production, construction, and then installation time, right? However, it would have probably limited options in terms of the features and styles and spatial variation for what you want in there. So it is a balance of what you want to do. So that is one type. The second type, of course, is you can actually 3D print on site, which is also being experimented.
Which you have to explain this to me, because I can't scale up in my head. We know what 3D printing is, but I can't imagine how you build a house with 3D printing.
Yeah, I think, it's actually not new. In fact, I wrote about that in 2018 book about, there's a whole film and 3D printed houses being done all over the world, including here. And that is, if you imagine a site, let's say a house site, a crane-like structure comes and there is something that pours concrete mix into a formwork, and in a precise way, and it's all robotic, right? And so that is one type. Or a crane with a robotic arm can lay the bricks. And so there are different ways of building it. But these methods have existed for a while now, but they are becoming prominent in these circumstances. So that is another set. But there are traditional wood frame structures are also being built, but to a higher level of fire resistance and code now that is prevalent there. But I would say it's a mix of these things. I don't think we have seen this variety or diverse set of kinds of structures, options, ways of building have existed before. Mind you also that they have pre-approved designs that people can just adopt.
Well, I want to ask you about this because we've been talking about individual homes, but of course in California we're talking about building entire communities and neighborhoods, and we know that those neighborhoods until the fire had a very particular aesthetic and vernacular.
Yeah.
So do you go back to that vernacular? Do you try to advance it? Do you create something entirely new?
I think we are seeing all of those, and in one interesting example, Jared, they're actually moving some inherently fire-resistant structures, historic buildings from elsewhere. They're moving. We talked about on our episodes, one of the episodes, moving the entire buildings. That is also happening. And the idea there is that when you rebuild these communities, they shouldn't look like a bunch of boxes, unwelcoming and alienating. It needs to feel like a community people can relate to and live in them and work and function. So I think the character of the neighborhood is a huge factor in this, which is also why we won't see them being built very fast.
Well, Mahesh Das, always great to see you. Thank you for bringing us up to speed in what is going to, I'm sure people will look back at an extraordinary moment for how that then filters out to the rest of the world as we learn how California rebuilds.
I will end by saying that Massachusetts itself is adopting from California. Cape Cod, for example, all the communities in Cape Cod came together, and now they're reenacting a new preparation plan for this. So I think we are seeing that impact now on all communities.
All right, again, Mahesh Das, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Mahesh Das is president of Boston Architectural College and the co-author of the graphic novella about AI titled I, Nobot. He joins us every month. Coming up, the Boston Ballet is going electric. How legendary rock guitarist and longtime David Bowie collaborator Reeves Gabrels is turning up the volume on choreographer Michael Strohmeyer's world premiere. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Democratic Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey thinks his party's most urgent challenge is leadership, but he's optimistic for the next generation of potential Democratic leaders.
To me, it is a time of great fear and great courage, great worry, but great hope. And I want us to seize this moment.
What leadership role he might take going forward on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And McLean Middleton. For over 100 years, McLean Middleton has been dedicated to serving its clients and its community, offering guidance through the complexities of today's legal system. With locations in Woburn and Boston, McLean.com. And Bernadine Sung Megasin at Dream Mega International Realty, dedicated to helping buyers and sellers across Greater Boston, offering market insight and guidance through each step of the process. More at homesbybernadine.com. And Porter Square Books, hosting Life of Pi author Jan Martel for his new novel, Son of Nobody, a retelling of the Trojan War from the perspective of two commoners. April 3rd, info at portersquarebooks.com.
The GBH News app is where you want to start your day. It has the news you need, big stories, curated local coverage, no filler. Download it today on the App Store or Google Play.
I'm Jared Bowen, live on 89.7 from the Boston Public Library and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. This is The Culture Show. This electric guitar is Reeves Gabrel's. Gabrel's is a former David Bowie collaborator and current member of The Cure. His latest stage is not an arena, but the orchestra at Boston Ballet. Gabrel's is performing in the world premiere of choreographer Michael Strohmeyer's The Leisurely Installation of a New Window, set to an original score by Boston Ballet music director Misha Santora. Strohmeyer's work is paired with Frederick Ashton's The Dream, a ballet inspired by Shakespeare and set to Mendelssohn's A Midsummer Night's Dream. The program is on through March 29th at the Citizens Opera House. Joining me to talk about it all are Reeves Gabrel's and choreographer Michael Strohmeyer. Welcome to The Culture Show. It's great to have you both here. Congratulations on this world premiere.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I was there for opening night. I saw the very first performance last week. This is so exciting. Michael, let me start with you to tell us what we are watching in this piece. And I understand it all stems from Plato.
Yeah. So there is a lot of philosophical influence in my work from a lot of my reading, a lot of my education focused on philosophy. So the philosophy with this ballet is about these people, this society kind of navigating rules, and they're negotiating between these inherited structures and systems and trying to figure out how do we operate inside of it. So the piece is broken up into 3 movements: thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And each one kind of has its own set of conditions that they're trying to navigate, whether it's order in the thesis, breaking away from that order in antithesis, and then finding this new way of being in the synthesis. So we kind of have this dialectical model of how to move beyond what we know into something that is hopeful and something that's new and feels fresh.
And how would you describe those modes of moving through movement and what comes out, how that expression comes out of the body in those scenarios you just described?
Yes, so in the thesis, you see a lot of very strict and strong classical ballet movements. You have these very kind of ordered steps that are very codified. In the antithesis, we start to see this use of the spine, almost this serpentine quality that feels like they're using their backs in this very fluid kind of way. And then the synthesis synthesizes both pieces of information. It's like, how can we take the information that worked in the thesis and the antithesis and put it together to make something that feels like we're moving beyond what we know, but we still kind of keep our roots. So the bodies are moving in these very kind of eclectic ways at times. And I think the electric guitar really helps to bring that into what's being seen and heard for the audience.
Thank you for making the segue. I was just about to make Reeves Gabrel's. So bring me into the music. And yes, we have this contrast in styles and how they coalesce just as we hear it again, as Michael said, in the music.
Well, a lot of my background is visual. So what brought me to Boston was Berkeley, like a lot of people. But I originally was I went to Parsons School of Design in New York, and I've always I've always heard things in colors and in movement, not it's just not simply a sonic experience for me. And what is interesting about the thesis, the antithesis, and then the synthesis, the way the piece is constructed is when we first started rehearsing with the dancers, and I got to see it. For me, I felt like, well, there's certain themes in the first section that I can hold on to, and there's certain themes in the second section that I can hold on to, and I can see where they can be combined and also be recombinant, where I can do
bring them both together. And this was before we had actually ever spoken about that. This has come up in talking to other people together and in different combinations. When you talked about the spine being in the second movement, like I saw this sound, you know, in the third movement. I saw it all kind of, the dancers wrapping around each other, but in a caring way, in a gentle way, like the way you want something to resolve, you know.
Well, it's so interesting to hear you talk about the bodies and envisioning those. Does that then transfer to when you're with the orchestra? And as we just heard coming into this segment, the notions of classical music, and then where your electric guitar comes into that, and is it an embrace? Is it an interruption?
Well, that's a good question, and given my history with David, you know, my 15 years with him and my 15 years so far with the Cure, because part of my job is, or not job's the wrong word, part of what I bring to it is a certain amount of disruption or a challenge. Like what David liked was that I challenged him when he was singing. I mean, there's no way you were going to outdo David Bowie, yeah. but he wanted that combative thing, and with this piece, it's a different feeling, it's a different vibe, and I've tried to round off the sharp edges in my own playing to you know, one of the things that's important when you work with a singer is you want to cradle them, you know, when they're singing, you want to support them, and so in my mind, what I'm doing is a certain amount of I'm not there holding anybody up, you know, literally, but sonically I'm trying to, or musically I'm trying to support them as they dance, and to support the piece that you've written, and that's the challenge to me, was to find my way into that. The original piece that went back and forth between me and Misha Santora was when he first asked me, I gave him the most aggressive and abrasive part of me. Yeah. And I thought, well, if he can go with this, and then I'm home. Then I can be any part of my personality can come out.
As we certainly hear. So, Michael, I want to bring you back into this. You talked about some of your building blocks, and I know you describe yourself as a movement architect. So you have your research, you have Plato, you have the form, and this is a very big piece, so many building elements with 18 dancers. Where does the music, and when does the music come into the process for you?
So with this piece, because it was something that didn't exist, the music came in iterations. I mean, when we first started, we actually completed the antithesis first, which was very interesting because I finished the antithesis and I go, well, now this is giving me information on what is the thesis? How do we get here? Which is not a typical way of working. You know, usually you will work in order from start to finish, but I started in the middle. And so I think that then gave me information of going, so what comes before and what should come after? It was actually kind of the perfect storm, and that was actually the part of the music that Misha Santora had completed first. So I just kind of went with it. So whatever pieces of the music were done, that's where I choreographed. And so it was kind of asynchronous, and it wasn't a traditional, way of working, especially with something that kind of has this abstract narrative at its core. You usually want to go from beginning to end to figure out, how the pieces connect to each other, but because it didn't, and it was atypical, that actually gave me a little bit more freedom on how to address the choreography, that perhaps I could go about it in ways that felt unfamiliar to me, that would actually be fresh and exciting. And I think that is also packed into the instrumentation with the music, because the guitar also adds this element of surprise. And if you think about how this piece is about people navigating change and wanting to find their way inside of these systems, you start to understand that the guitar is like a character in itself, that it becomes this thing that goes like, change can sometimes be uncomfortable, it can be surprising, it can kind of throw you off course. And, sometimes the guitar is intentionally like an interruption to something. Sometimes it's just there under the surface. So the colors of that, I think, pair well with what we're trying to say. And then that hopefully by the end, the audience feels like they've been taken on this journey that perhaps feels close to something that they can understand and recognize for themselves, but also feel completely new in itself.
That is the voice of choreographer Michael Strohmeyer, choreographer of the leisurely installation of A New Window, which just had its premiere with Boston Ballet as part of The Dream, a program on through March 29th, presented by Boston Ballet. I'm also speaking with guitarist Reeves Gabrels. So Reeves, again, perfect segue. Thank you for that, because I was wondering what the guitar has represented to you as an instrument, and specifically the electric guitar.
Well, I think I spend a lot of time in the electric part of the electric guitar, and also the overtones that are generated by using a certain amount of I guess guitar players would call it overdrive, or it makes it closer to a saxophone, or to my ear, and the overtones from that, and that makes it more like a human voice, And one of the things that I'm surprised and extremely flattered by is that I have a lot of room to improvise in a piece that would normally be fully written out as a continuous part, and that Misha and Mikko Nissen would have that they would and Michael as well, that the three of them would trust me, because I could have a psychotic break in the middle of a show. You never know, and so I to be given that freedom it comes with a lot of responsibility.
Well, I want to ask you, because I was speaking of visualization, the night I was there for the opening, I was thinking about you. You're in the pit, right? The orchestra pit with the other musicians. What is it like to be among them? But knowing your role is very different, where you can improvise, where you can have a break and be prepared for that.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's interesting in one way, because it's sort of like being the new kid at school, So there's 55 musicians that have been together anywhere from 40 years to 5 years, say, and plus I'm playing an electric guitar, which is carries its own baggage with it, and it's not the type of baggage it carries doesn't necessarily sit well with a pit orchestra. It depends on everybody being willing to accept that, and it's been a really nice experience feeling it warm up, the other thing is because I am improvising a certain percentage of the time, I would like to see the dancers and react to them, and so what I've discovered is my way of doing it is I've got one eye on the music, one eye on Misha, the conductor, and one eye watching the shadows, because I can't always see the figures, but I can see the movement in the shadows, which creates a little bit of abstraction, but not in a bad way. It's almost like watching water flow to me, and then the bit of music that was played at the beginning is I get to play more like a soprano sax or an alto sax, two of my favorite instruments, that should be followed by cello, but those are three things that the orchestra already has. So I have to keep the electric in the guitar department.
Well, it certainly comes out into the audience too, and the energy that brings. And Michael, let me ask you. I'll leave you with the last question, which is: after you go through an experience like this, where you're, for lack of a better term, you're breaking rules, you're moving things forward, how does that become a building block for the next piece?
I think it's just information. For me, I'm always in a choreographic process, and that starts very early, and a lot of it starts with my reading and through literature. But I think what most people don't know, surprise, surprise, is that after a piece is finished, there is an extremely long process of me watching the footage again and dissecting and analyzing every part of the work. And it's not a way to analyze the artists. It's actually for me to look at the composition and go, what did I learn from this process? And then I go, and what is it that the dancers are trying to teach me through what I've taught them? And that will happen for months. I mean, sometimes even a couple of years. The last piece that I did for the ballet in 23, I just stopped watching those videos maybe a couple of months ago, because I'm watching it going, I need to be able to see this through a lens where I can learn and understand something about my own choreographic product. And that's what I will get from this piece. Is every night I'm watching it, and I'm hoping that everything goes well, and I want to make sure everyone's safe and healthy. But I know that at the end of this, after this Sunday, when the piece is kind of laid to rest for a little bit, I will still sit with it. It's what's going to keep me up at night at 3 a.m. and just watching it by myself and going, okay, I could have done this, or what's this idea that I was running with, and maybe for something else, how could I use it? So it's something that's very close. And here is the child has been birthed, but now the process is going to be, taking care of it and allowing this piece to continue to teach and inspire me.
Well, thank you both of you for bringing us so deeply into your processes, each respectively, for this piece. It's been really fascinating to learn about, and of course, people can go see it right through the weekend. Thank you so much for taking your time out and being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike Hall-Strohmeil is a former Boston Ballet dancer and the choreographer of the leisurely installation of A New Window, now having its world premiere at Boston Ballet. Reeves Gabrels is the guitarist known for his work with David Bowie and The Cure, and is currently performing with the Boston Ballet Orchestra. The ballet is presenting the Dream program at Citizens Opera House through March 29th. Coming up, a revolution was brewing long before the tea hit the harbor. Museum of Fine Arts curator Nani Gadsden joins us to explore the Boston Tea Party through the objects of colonial life. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
Authorities say anti-Semitic violence is rising in Europe. In London, 4 ambulances operated by a Jewish charity have been set on fire.
This was an attack on the Jewish community and on society at large, because these ambulances are used to save lives of people from all sections of society.
That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Rockland Trust Bank, helping foster healthy relationships with money by providing education and resources to the community, one neighborhood at a time. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC. And Subaru of New England. The all-wheel drive 2026 Subaru Crosstrek Hybrid is designed for New England terrain. Subaru retailer locations at SubaruofNewEngland.com. And the Delaney at the Vale, a luxury senior living rental community for adults 62 plus, where residents choose how to spend their time with amenities and programming designed to offer opportunities for connection and learning. DelaneyAtTheVale.com.
When you can't get your daily dose of Jim and Marjorie on the radio, you can still get it sent right to your computer, tablet, or smartphone. Download the Boston Public Radio podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And don't miss a moment of Boston Public Radio.
I'm Jared Bowen, live on 89.7 from our studio at the Boston Public Library and streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel. This is The Culture Show, and this, as you may recognize, is the theme to our ongoing series Countdown to 250, our recurring examination of the events leading up to the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. We're continuing our monthly conversation with the Museum of Fine Arts about artworks in their collection that offer insights into the American Revolution and the people who were a part of that history. Today we're talking about the Boston Tea Party as a story told through the objects of colonial life: teapots, tea tables, and tea caddies. Joining me as our guide is the MFA's Nani Gadsden, Senior Curator of American Decorative Arts and Sculpture. Nani, welcome back to the show. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
This is one where I especially have to remind people that we are streaming on the GBH News YouTube channel because we will be talking about specific objects in the MFA's collection, which they can see and if you're here at the library, we'll have them on the monitors as we're talking about them. But in an overall concept, tell us about what tea meant, what drinking tea meant, and gathering around tea meant in our nation's very early history.
Well, I'm so glad you asked, because this is really how I got hooked on American decorative arts and sculpture, like with the objects of history. And why I find them interesting is because they help us understand why people made the decisions they did and why they fought wars or battles or so forth. And for this example, the Boston Tea Party is a perfect example. What did tea mean to the people who were that culture? Tea was imported from China and really didn't come to the American colonies until around 1700, give or take. But it so infused itself, I really did not mean that.
Well played.
So infused itself into colonial life and to European life. So this wasn't just in the American colonies, but this was in England and throughout Europe, that tea became such a factor of life. It shaped what you owned in your home, because this was at the same time, this coincided with the same time where people were getting more individualized objects for their home. Instead of having just a table, you'd have a table for a specific thing, such as a tea table. You would have, instead of having one chair, you would have different chairs for women or for men or so forth. So this was starting the specialization of forms. So people were getting more objects in their home. But it was a huge investment to buy all the things you needed to properly serve tea. You needed, as you said, the teapot, the teaspoons, the tea kettle, the tea caddy, the tea table. And so it became very much of what people focused on for interior living and household goods, but also how they socialized. Tea became a core part of how families were together in the mornings at breakfast, and then afternoon tea parties, which often spilled into evening tea parties and included alcohol as well.
You did it again. I couldn't stop.
Spilled. Oh yeah, I did.
I
did. See, it's watch out, you'll do it too. But it's just this wonderful, all-encompassing. It affected not only what you owned but who you interacted with, when you interacted with them, and where. And so tea had this massive impact on daily life in the colonial world. And then the British Parliament decides that they're going to tax it. And it's not the only thing they were going to tax, but they were trying to reap the money back from the huge amounts of money that they spent in the American colonies on various wars. And one way to do that was to tax the colonists. And the colonists, you've always heard the phrase, did not like the taxation without representation. And one of the biggest sort of ways this came to a head was when these shipments of tea came to the American colonies, and some came to Charleston, some came to Boston, some came to New York. And they were basically, this was old tea that was in the warehouses in Britain, and they needed to get it off their hands. They needed to sell it before it went really bad. And they said, let's send it to the colonies, and we're going to tax them for it, so we'll make money off of this too. And the colonists, particularly here in Boston, said, no.
Because they were hitting something that was, as you're illustrating, because of the way people constructed their lives around tea, they were literally hitting something close to home, which became this galvanizing force. Well, let's start talking about pieces in the collection, and I think let's go straight to this Copley portrait, John Singleton Copley portrait of Paul Revere, to understand how important tea was. Yeah. Here, Paul Revere is being rendered in this portrait, and he's holding a teapot. That is not an accident.
No, not at all. And Paul Revere, many people know him as the patriot who rode a horse, but he was Boston's most important silversmith of the time of the Revolution. And he was very political as well, as we know. And here he is in his work clothes. He's not in his dress clothes. He's in his work clothes at a table with instruments, tools of his silversmithing, his engraving, and he's holding an unfinished teapot. To me, that screams so much. This was painted in 1768, which was the same year as a lot of the taxes were being implemented, and he's looking at this unfinished potential of tea in his hand. And he sort of has his other hand up to his chin, and he's thinking, and he's pondering. He's asking us to think more. And I think the direct correlation with tea, there becomes a huge amount of correlation with the concept of tea and resistance. Boycotting tea means resistance. So colonists started drinking homemade herbal teas instead, and they called them liberty teas. They didn't necessarily change their household practices, but they might have done it with coffee or with liberty teas instead.
Before we leave this portrait, I want to ask you, you've pointed out the background is very significant too, because if people think about portraits of that era, they're typically very everything is by design, including the background. Mm-hmm. Where are they? What's the atmosphere? Is there a landscape behind them? What do the trees represent? There is hardly anything behind Paul Revere in this portrait.
And it's a very unusual table-like setting. With this great lustrous sheen off of it, so Copley really gets to play with reflections and all, but we don't really have a concept of where Revere is in that. That's not his home. It's not his workshop. That's way too nice of a table to be his workshop. So it's an ambiguous setting, which makes you question even more what's going on in this painting.
Well, let's stay with furniture for a bit. And you have a piece, the MFA has a piece in its collection, a tea table from 1775.
Yeah.
That it sounds pretty ingenious, actually, what they were doing with tea tables in 1775.
Yeah, it's pretty. This is a tilt-top tea table. It's a round tea table on a pillar with 3 feet that come out. And that top, as you can see in the images on the screen or online, it can rotate up or it can be flat and lock into place. It rotates up, you can push it against the wall and show it as a display piece, because that's one full piece of mahogany. That's a 35, 38-inch mahogany. We don't get mahogany like that anymore. It's a beautiful piece of wood, really showing that off.
And again, that's significant, as you were just saying. We're in an era in which people began to acquire things to be display pieces in addition to utilitarian practices.
Exactly. So this could be brought out of the corner for serving tea and then taken back into the corner and displayed properly. The crazy thing about this tilt-top tea table is it's made in Philadelphia, and became known. Some cabinet makers there became known for making what we now call bird cages, which is a mechanism that you can see here in the picture that allows the top not only to tilt up and down, but to swivel like a lazy Susan. So the hostess wouldn't have to reach to hand you a teacup. She could literally just sort of swivel the tabletop around, allowing for much more genteel interaction at the table.
So there really was not only a whole social structure, but protocols that were developed around tea as well.
And it was really starting in this time period that there were starting to become protocols and etiquette. The real etiquette-laden time is the 19th century. That's when it really gets codified into manuals and so forth. But there was a lot of etiquette that women were expected to have, proper comportment, posture, what it was okay to talk about and what was not okay to talk about. But all of the little intricacies of what everybody talks about with your finger and so forth, those conversations don't really start until the 19th century.
Just planned here. I'm speaking with Dani Offline, Senior Curator of American Decorative Arts and Sculpture at the Museum of Fine Arts. This is part of our Countdown to 250 series, where we're talking about objects in the museum's collection every month. So let's go to an actual teapot, which you have in your collection, which when I first saw the images that you shared with our team preparing for this segment, I was wondering if it was the same teapot in the Paul Revere portrait, because there are very similar design elements there.
And
we're showing it now again, streaming
exactly.
on our GBH
and
News YouTube channel.
Of course, chose that. This is a teapot by Paul Revere, and this is sort of we will show these next to each other in the gallery with the painting, because it gives you an idea of what the potential in his hand could become, with all of the engraving and the repoussé chasing and so forth. So it is this double-bellied form, which means it's globular up top and then has another sort of bulge below. And it has all of this engraving on it that is and chasing, which is Revere's specialty. And repoussé chasing is when you take punches and you punch in the silver and then you reach inside and punch it out, and keep doing that until it makes the forms that you're wanting. So you're making the designs by punching in and punching out silver to make that design. And so you have that cartouche with an engraving in the middle of it.
So in the cartouche, is that a coat of arms that we're looking at too for a family?
It could be a coat of arms. This is actually, yes, this is a coat of arms. We are still trying to decipher why this coat of arms is on this pot, because it's from a Philadelphia man, and we don't know whether he was the initial person who purchased this pot or whether he got it, as so often the case was. There were many sort of estate auctions, and people acquired things from others, or things were brought down through marriages to other areas. So
I'm struck by how embellished this is as a piece of work, a piece of art as a piece of work. It's also a piece of art. And was there an intention to start to create independent design, another way to move away from England? We talk about, we've spent a lot of time talking about George Washington lately and all of the protocols that he wanted to just have completely disappear from England. No royalty, no monarch, no adulation of that sort. What were they doing with the arts at this time?
Washington was part of them. They were so steeped in British culture. We fought several wars against the British before we really started distinguishing ourselves culturally. And you will see, as a art historian, I search for what is American about American colonial, and we can point out little aspects of it, but so much of the colonists thought of themselves as British. And they were British, and they followed British customs, and the concept of how to show you were a refined citizen, that were the same. So a lot of our arts follow the British model for decades to come, and really isn't until well into the 19th century that American arts start to try to break off in different directions.
Well, Dani Offline, always great to speak with you. We're supposed to talk about a tea caddy, but people just have to go to the Museum of Fine Arts to see it
It's a new acquisition, and it's a wonderfully rare piece.
Well, thank you so much for being here and your insight as always.
Thank you.
Nani Gadsden is Senior Curator of American Decorative Arts and Sculpture at the MFA. As part of our Countdown to 250, we're speaking with the Museum of Fine Arts every month, talking about artworks from the collection that offer a fresh perspective on the American Revolution. To keep on top of all of the museum's exhibitions and programming, go to the MFA's website. Well, thank you for listening to another edition of The Culture Show. Tune in tomorrow or watch us on the GBH News YouTube channel for opera legends Renee Fleming and Thomas Hampson on the BSO's staging of Nixon in China. Plus, James Beard Award-winning chef Jamie Bissonnette on his latest enterprise, Finding Paradise in Pizza on Beacon Hill. Thanks today to Henry Santoro for curating our Culture Cast. Today's engineer is Bill Piacitelli. The BPL technical and logistics crew, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Sandra Lopez-Burke, Juan Jose Cadena, Chris Hanks, Pat Lally. Also thanks to the Newsfeed Cafe. Thank you to everyone who came down here to be with us in the library today. We always love seeing you. If you ever miss us here on the radio, be sure to check out the Culture Show podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jared Bowen. Have a great day.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Spend your afternoon with us. Stay with us for GBH's All Things Considered at 4 and Marketplace at 6:30. But first, the world. A global